Begin?
Yes, we are. Oh. Okay, we're ready when you are. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I hereby call to order the City Council successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency Housing Authority regular meeting for January 24th, 2022. Would you all please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. That moves us on to item 3, changes to the order of the agenda. I have 2 changes that I know of so far. One is item 8A, public hearing, consideration of the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision on 2125 Carmelita. The appellant has formally canceled and withdrawn their appeal of the Planning Commission's decision on the 2125 Carmelita project. This item will therefore not be held. And also item 9A, discuss and provide input on the design of the new field lighting at Flanagan Field, Burton Park, and Stadium Field, Highlands Park. The Vice Mayor Rack has to recuse himself from the discussion on Burton Park, so we will take these 2 items separately. Jeff, are there any other changes that you'd like to mention?
No additional changes this evening, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. From my colleagues, any changes to the order of the agenda? Okay, wonderful. We will move on to item 4, presentations. Present a proclamation proclaiming January 2022 as Human Trafficking Prevention Month. With us this evening, we have Ruth Robinson, member of the Catholic Sisters Against Slavery and a regular participant in the San Mateo County Human Trafficking Initiative meetings. I'm excited to have you here, Ruth Robinson. And I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation and then open it up if you'd like to make any comments this evening. So, absolutely. So, proclaiming January 2022 as Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Whereas the United States Senate designated January 11th as National Human Trafficking Awareness Day in 2007, and beginning in 2010 by presidential proclamation, each January has been designated National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And whereas human trafficking involves commercial sexual exploitation and labor exploitation, it is a human rights violation and a violation of both federal and California law. It also promotes the breakdown of families and communities, fuels organized crime, deprives countries of human capital, undermines public health, and imposes large economic costs. And whereas the crime of human trafficking is present in every country and every US state, and whereas the FBI has identified California and the San Francisco Bay Area as an area of high prevalence for human trafficking. Although human trafficking is illegal, victims often do not recognize their victimization and do not know that help is available or where to seek assistance. And whereas forced labor, involuntary domestic servitude, and commercial sexual exploitation of adults and youth have been found to exist within local communities, and whereas public awareness about human trafficking still needs to reach broader communities and communicate more information about the nuances of this crime, and whereas the County of San Mateo has dedicated resources, including the San Mateo County Human Trafficking Program, and has supported the efforts of the San Mateo County Police Chiefs and Sheriff Association, and has partnered with other governmental and non-governmental organizations to identify and address human trafficking within San Mateo County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Sarah McDowell, Mayor of the City of San Carlos, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim January 2022 as Human Trafficking Prevention Month and encourage the community to support the County of San Mateo's efforts in the fight against human trafficking and visit stophumantraffickingsmc.org to learn ways to take action. Presented this 24th day of January 2022. So Ruth, this will be presented to you separately, but I would love to open it up to you now if you'd like to make some comments.
Thank you very much, Mayor McDowell. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And thank you for placing this proclamation on the agenda. Unfortunately, many people think of human trafficking as a crime that happens elsewhere, but they would be wrong. It occurs throughout the United States and here in San Mateo County. It happens to women and girls, boys and men, foreign nationals, and U.S. citizens. In 2021, the San Mateo County Human Trafficking Program conducted a voluntary assessment of local agencies and organizations and found that approximately 300 trafficking victims with some connection to San Mateo County were identified in the year 2020. That's an average of over 23 victims per month. These victims include minors and adults, victims of labor trafficking and sex trafficking, and we have no idea how many more there are living in the shadows. The San Mateo County Human Trafficking Program works to enhance the response to human trafficking countywide in several different ways by encouraging collaborative partnerships among county agencies and non-governmental organizations, by working to enhance the delivery of services to victims, by training law enforcement, and by educating and training community groups, and by raising awareness about the crime of human trafficking through a variety of events throughout the year. The program hosts a monthly meeting called the Human Trafficking Initiative, which, as you mentioned, I attend on behalf of the Catholic Sisters. The meetings are open to members of governmental, non-governmental, faith-based, and community-based organizations, and members of the public who have a role or interest in the response to human trafficking within San Mateo County. The meetings focus on the response to human trafficking within the county, along with delivering relevant information on all aspects of human trafficking. As the mayor mentioned, if you would like to contact the Human Trafficking Program with any questions, to request training for your agency or organization, or to get more involved in the anti-trafficking movement, visit the San Mateo County Human Trafficking Program website at stophumantraffickingsmc.org. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight, and thank you for your consideration and your time. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Robinson, and thank you for all the work you do on this very important issue in our community. Do my colleagues have any comments? Councilmember Permer Lohan.
Yes, I just want to thank Ruth Robinson and your organization for this important work, and for Mayor McDowell for bringing this proclamation forward. A good friend of mine is a news reporter, or works in the news industry, and has been aware of this issue for decades, and has often expressed concern to me that there isn't enough awareness about this issue in our community. And so I will be pleased to report back to her and let her know that San Carlos is starting a conversation here. And I want to thank you for your courage and leadership in this area.
Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Ragg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just also wanted to thank you for bringing this proclamation forward, and thank Ruth for all her work and for all the work that her community is doing to raise awareness and help on this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I too am glad we've made this proclamation and can help in any way we can to raise awareness on this important issue. And thank you, Ruth, for speaking this evening and helping us spread the word on this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for your remarks. Thank you again, Ms. Robinson, for joining us this evening and for your very important work. And with that, we will move on to item 5, council communications and announcements. Do my colleagues have anything they'd like to bring up at this point? Okay, seeing none, I would just like to take a moment to thank the organizers and everyone in our community who participated in San Carlos Week of the Family. My family contributed a donation of hygiene items for middle school students in need, and I biked in the Tour de Family bike ride on Sunday. It was a wonderful event. I wanted to thank the Sheriff's Department for coming out and helping block the streets for everyone riding their bikes. And I especially want to thank San Carlos Bikes and Sonia Elks for sharing that wonderful event with our community. There was a huge turnout for many of the San Carlos Week of the Family events, and it's become very apparent to me that our community has really missed these community building events, and I really appreciate having them back. Okay, and with I don't see any other further items to raise, so we will move on to public comment. Persons wishing to address the City Council on matters not on the posted agenda may do so now. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. If the item you are speaking on is not listed on the agenda, please be advised that the City Council may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed under the Brown Act. The City Council's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future City Council agenda for a more comprehensive action or report and formal discussion and input at that time. Crystal, are there any members of the public joining us this evening?
I do not see any hands raised for items not on the agenda.
Okay. Then we will move right along to item 7, consent calendar. Do any of my colleagues wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Councilmember Rack.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull item 7C.
Okay. Any other requests? Seeing none, I will entertain, I guess, is there any public comment on the consent calendar, Crystal? Anyone wishing to comment?
Yes, I do see 2 hands up at the moment. Let me go ahead and pull up my slide for the timer. Okay, so first hand up I have is Jennifer Durkin. You should be able to unmute. Jennifer, I do see that you have unmuted yourself, but we cannot hear you. Jennifer, if you want to try calling in, maybe that would help with your audio. And the number is listed on the screen right now. So I'll go ahead and place you back on mute. And if you can go ahead and call in, then we'll take your comment at that time. So moving on to Justin Bachman, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so this is in regard to item 7F. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Justin Bachman, and I am here on behalf of the Construction Industry Force Account Council, also known as CFAC. CFAC's mission is, in part, to ensure public agencies' compliance with the California Public Contract Code. Through our efforts, we seek to ensure a fair, transparent, and level playing field for all public works contractors. It has been brought to our attention that the city's actions taken during the course of the bid process for this project may not be in compliance with the California Public Contract Code. The staff report attached to this item states the first 3 lowest apparent bidders withdrew their bids due to not factoring the total cost of materials. The specifications for this project were clearly listed in the bid documents and further clarified in follow-up addendums. Therefore, the rationale for relieving the 3 lowest bidders shall not be acceptable pursuant to California Public Contract Code Section 5100 et sec. Additionally, moving forward and as required by California Public Contract Code Section 5105, any bidder who claims a mistake shall be prohibited from participating in further bidding on the project. We expect the city to uphold this requirement in an effort to maintain a fair and level playing field for other potential contractors. CFAC is currently in the process of investigating the actions taken by the city and the process used for relieving bidders. California Public Contract Code is clear in the procedure that must be followed and the qualifying actions which must take place to legally relieve bidders. As part of CFAC's mission to assure public contract code compliance, we advocate on behalf of taxpayers as well. The instructions to bidders for this project, as well as Public Contract Code Section 20170, require prospective bidders to include a bid bond in an amount equal to at least 10% of the total bid. Public Contract Code Section 20172 requires the bidder failing to execute the contract to forfeit this security. Although the city intends to reject all bids for this project, the staff report clearly states the reason for doing so. This is the withdrawal of bids from the 3 lowest bidders. The procurement process used to secure a public works contract is costly and resource heavy. By failing to require the forfeiture of bid bonds. The city is doing an injustice to its citizens as well as setting precedent for future projects. We urge the city to address this issue accordingly. Thank you all for your time and consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bachman. I guess this might be a question for Greg or Jeff. Would staff like to share a response to this concern as council considers this item?
Madam Mayor, we'll look into the item. Their advice is to reject all bids at this time.
Okay, so we will proceed with it on the consent calendar.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Crystal, any other public comment?
Yes, we do have another hand up. Cheryl Hinchman, you should be able to unmute.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Cheryl Pomerank Hinchman, and I used to be for 12 and a half years, the CEO of the San Carlos Chamber of Commerce. And I'm speaking on behalf of, for the proposal by Lisa Eccles to be the events coordinator for the Art and Wine Fair. I think it's a little misguided to think that this could fit into an events person that could also handle other events like the San Carlos Weekend family, what's it called? I forget now. The weekend where everybody's in the park. Anyway, beg your pardon? What, Ron?
Hometown Days.
Hometown Days, that's right, thank you. It's something, when I joined the chamber in 1998, I was in awe of the amount of work and the time that it took to put together the Art and Wine Fair. And no one could handle it like Lisa, who gave birth to it 12 years before that. She's done a wonderful job and has continued until the pandemic. Would be a shame to try to fit this into a position where somebody did the Art and Wine Fair part-time and Hometown Days part-time. I just don't think it could be done. It takes so many years of volunteers and so much knowledge that Lisa has accumulated over the 29 years that she's done this. Lisa now knows all these little ins and outs. And this year, of course, there's going to be a lot more challenges because of the parklets and all of the other things that are coming up. So I think Lisa is the only person who could do this. And she has her own business. It's an events business. When she started that business, the chamber hired her back to do the Art and Wine Fair because we—
Thank you, Ms. Hinchman. Unfortunately, your time is running out. Would you like to wrap up?
I see that. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the public that right now we're only taking comments on our consent calendar. Other items that are coming later in the agenda, I will take public comment on as they come forward. But right now, we're taking public comment on the consent calendar items. Crystal, is there anyone else with their hand raised?
No, there are no further hands.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have Vice Mayor Rack's request to pull item 7C. Is there a motion from my colleagues?
I will move items 7A and B, D through H.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Collins. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote on this and then circle back to item C, I suppose, Crystal, or should we take item C and then have a vote?
I can go ahead.
Right, we'll have a vote.
Yes.
We'll have a vote. Yes. Thank you.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
And Mayor McDowell?
Yes. Okay, I'll turn it over to Vice Mayor Rack if you'd like to talk about why you pulled item C.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I was reading through the staff report on that, I understand they had the request for proposals, and it looked like maybe the walk audit and some of the bike and pedestrian master plan work wasn't included in the original request for proposals. And obviously we need signage around that too. I wanted to just clarification from staff that they feel the bid and the selection of this company sort of meets the criteria and that we're sort of getting everything covered within the amount that we're approving today or would approve today.
Good evening, Vice Mayor. This is Christian Padilla, Economic Development Coordinator, and I could speak on behalf of the Wayfinding Project. So I'll give you a brief background on the addendums related to wayfinding. There was 2 addendums to this RFP. Both did not include the bike and pedestrian plans. Those had already been incorporated to the original RFP that was released on October 25th of 2021. So addendum number 1 included the redesign of 8 out of the 22 placemaking signs to incorporate two new areas, South Laurel and Industrial Arts. And it also allowed contractors with a C45 license to bid on this project. Originally, it was just a Class A contractor license.
I guess my question is, do we feel like everything now with the bike and ped that this is what we're going to get is all inclusive for what we need, I guess, because the way the staff report read to me was certain things kind of happened after the RFP went in, and I wanted to make sure that that's sort of, we're getting coverage for all the signage that we need.
Yeah, I'll clarify. It wasn't after the RFP that the bike and pedestrian plans were incorporated. It was after the engineer's estimate, which is an estimate that's provided by our design consultants, which actually was published and given to us in 2019. So not the RFP, but the engineer's estimate that gave us a budget for the estimated costs for this wayfinding project.
I see. So the engineer's estimate came, and then the bike and ped plan came, but the RFP is inclusive. It was just that sort of the cost around it that might have been not completely reflective.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, that's great. I'm satisfied with that and happy to move this item forward unless others have comments or questions.
I don't see any. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I move that we approve item 7C on the from the consent calendar. I need to read that all, Crystal? Or Greg at this point?
I'm sorry, what was?
Do I need to read the whole item now since we pulled it?
No,
that.
7C, just what you did was perfect.
I'll second that.
Okay, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
And Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We will now move to item 8, public hearing, and we are skipping 8A for the reasons listed already, that it had not been held. So item 8B is consideration of introducing an ordinance amending ordinance 1363 for the planned development zoning district for the property located at 1129 Old County Road. And with us tonight is Andrea Martisic and I believe Chris Dakumos, the consultant. So I'll hand it over to you, Andrea. Thank you. Andrea, you're on mute.
There we go. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Start over. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Andrea Martisic, Principal Planner. The item before you this evening is a request for an amendment to a planned development district, which is PD 20. This district governs the site located at 1129 Old County Road. Next slide, please.
Give me 1 second. Looks like I have to pull it back up.
Oh, thanks, Crystal. Thanks. The subject site is located in the Home Depot Lucky Shopping Center, which is bound by Old County Road, Howard Avenue, and Britton Avenue. The specific site we're discussing this evening is located right in the middle of the block along Old County Road. The surrounding area primarily consists of larger retail uses with buildings above 25,000 square feet, such as the Home Depot and Lucky site, as well as a separate smaller building that contains the Dollar Tree store. This site we're discussing this evening is approximately 0.62 acres. And on this site is an existing 5,300 square foot retail building. Previous uses within this building included pet-related retail and services. However, the building is now vacant. This site is located within the PD20 zoning district and has a general plan designation of commercial industrial. And I just want to reiterate that although there are several uses on this site, the PD this evening and ordinance we're discussing only relates to this one building and would not affect Home Depot, Lucky, or the dollar store. Next slide. The applicant this evening is requesting two changes to the ordinance, and the applicant is representing the ownership group for this site. The first change that they're requesting is to remove an existing restriction that prohibits division of the space into multiple tenants. And then the second request they are asking for is to allow some additional commercial uses at the site. There are no proposed exterior changes at this time to either the building or the site itself. And I'll go more into depth on the next few slides about each of these requests. Next slide, please. I wanted to briefly provide some background for the site. The shopping plaza itself and nearby businesses, as I mentioned, are primarily large format stores. In 2005, Ordinance 1363 was adopted, and that ordinance amended a previous ordinance that provided for the plan of development at this site. The 2005 ordinance allowed for the development of a single 5,300 square foot building for retail. The division of space was prohibited within that ordinance, and a conditional use permit and architectural review were required for the new building, and the building was limited to one single tenant. The allowed use was pet retail and services, and that was the only allowed use under that ordinance. This was approved at the time because there was not a large pet retail store that served the residents of San Carlos, and it was able to be considered as a store that had a regional draw. It was also allowed because at the time it was considered that this proposed business would not conflict with businesses in the downtown, which was a concern at the time. The limitations put on the building and business included in this PD came from those concerns, and those included the one tenant space, as well as the specifics of the pet services. For example, no grooming would be allowed, as that could be a conflict with businesses downtown. Since 2005, there's been many changes that have reduced concerns about competition from the site in regards to the downtown. There's been many residential units added downtown, and there's been several initiatives and decisions made by council which have contributed to a revitalized downtown San Carlos. Our downtown has become a significant attraction and destination on the Mid-Peninsula in and of itself. And so the concern that was originally present in 2005 about competition is much less so now than it was back then. Next slide, please. The applicant has indicated that they've had quite a bit of difficulty finding possible lessees, given the limited permitted uses, which again are only pet, retail, and service, as well as the size of the commercial space. The applicant is seeking to attract a wider range of tenants by allowing additional uses and dividing the building to increase the number of commercial spaces within the existing building footprint. The applicant has indicated that many tenants will be attracted to leasing that smaller space. There is currently a vet service business with retail that can occupy the space, but they do not need the entire 5,300 square feet. And again, the second request is talking about allowing additional uses because it's difficult to find uses that are really within this narrow area of pet services and retail. The proposal will utilize many of the GCI zoning uses, which are general commercial industrial, with some exceptions. The uses that are allowed in the GCI, either permitted or conditionally, but would not be allowed in this ordinance, are uses such as automotive repair and sales, lodging, firearm sales, or industrial uses. If approved, permitted uses could include banks, commercial entertainment and recreation, eating and drinking establishment, and retail sales. Next slide, please. Minor uses could include instructional services or public service facilities, and conditional use permit would be required for colleges, trade schools, or government offices. These are unlikely uses. We wouldn't expect to see these at this location. However, they are conditional in the GCI and were included with this. A complete list of the uses proposed are listed as Exhibit A to the ordinance and can be found on your packet pages 59 through 61. I wanted to point out that the applicant is requesting the ability to allow offices with a conditional use permit at this location. Staff is not supportive of this, as the preference is to have tenants in that location that generate sales tax revenue and contribute to the retail and services-oriented nature of the surrounding shopping center. The applicant is aware of staff's position, however, is asking the City Council to consider this option. And I believe the representative for the ownership will be speaking this evening as part of the public comment period to speak to this item. The Planning Commission, as part of its recommendation, which is on the next slide, please. In late December, they also heard the request for the office as a conditional use. And the Planning Commission is recommending that the City Council introduce an ordinance as staff proposed, so that is without the office use being permitted. And so they are recommending, that the City Council introduce an ordinance which would amend PD 20 and not include the offices as a conditional use. Staff has not received any comments on this project, and staff believes that these proposed changes would meet all of the findings as outlined in the staff report. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Are there any questions from council this evening on this item? Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Andrea, for the rundown in this one. And I'm just curious, I understand the concern about losing the retail nature and keeping, not allowing office use. But conditional use is just that. It's conditional on our approval. Is there, why would we not want at least the flexibility to allow conditional use? I just note, we do have other first floor retail locations on El Camino, Wheeler Plaza, Transit Village, et cetera, that, are sitting vacant. I'm just curious, why wouldn't we want the flexibility here conditionally to approve office?
Staff's position on that is that the way our municipal code breaks out the different types of office is there's not really a way to distinguish between, for lack of a better word, like retail office. So let's say something like a tax preparation service, which might be something that you see in a center like this, versus, a private company that wants office space. And so although the conditional use permit has findings that have to be met, they're based more on, the compatibility, of the use, but it doesn't really get into this type of office versus that type of office. So I think the concern is really just making sure we keep active uses within that site. However, it's completely up to council if they feel that, a conditional use permit would be a way to regulate that, and that could absolutely be included this evening.
But so the conditional use, I know there's a set list of findings, but does that allow us to basically decide if it's allowed or not? Or is it, the findings are such that if the applicant can show it meets the findings, then we're bound as a city to approve the conditional use?
I might defer to the city attorney, but I believe it's more of the latter, that if they're demonstrating that, they're not causing any or the characteristics of their business aren't causing, traffic concerns or anything else that we look at, that if they meet those findings, it would have to be approved.
I see.
Yeah, a little fine tuning on that is that, the findings all need to be made in the affirmative. So if members of the council or the planning commission, and then if it got appealed, we go to the council. If they felt they couldn't make the findings, that would be a basis for denial. And part of our job is to make sure that if there is a rejection, that there's an adequate record to demonstrate a denial of a particular project for a use permit.
I see. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. Are there any other questions from council? Okay, seeing none, I will open up the public hearing for public comment. And I understand that the applicant is here this evening as well, so looking forward to hearing from them. Crystal, would you like to, is there anyone in the waiting room?
I don't see any hands. There you go. Chris Santana, you should be able to unmute.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I guess I don't have a video. Thank you. I think Andrea did a fantastic job of summarizing, and I do appreciate the clarification questions as well on office. That was actually provided some clarity for myself as well with concern to where the perspectives are coming from for the city. One of the things that I just wanted and note, the office use is not top and foremost of the landlord's concerns. Really, the concerns that are primary to the ownership are the ones that it does seem that are not controversial, and there does seem to be support for the retail uses, and for that we are quite grateful. It would, of course, be a bonus for us if the office uses with conditional use could be allowed. Some of those uses could be, as you mentioned, tax services, it could be dental services, optometry, which one would typically see in a retail type center. And so those were our concerns there. Really, that would just be icing on the cake if that was allowed. But we would be incredibly pleased just to have staff support on the items you have already provided your support on. And I'd like to make myself available if you had any questions for me. I am the leasing agent for ownership, and this is my first zoning amendment I've ever processed.
Great, thank you, Chris, for being here tonight. Crystal, is there any other public comment?
No, there are no other hands.
Okay, well now, I guess I could move to close the public hearing unless anyone has questions for Chris Santana before we close that up.
Madam Mayor, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Palmer Lohan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
Councilmember Collins,
Yes.
and Mayor McDowell.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Old habits die hard, I understand. Okay, so now it's time for a discussion. Would any of my colleagues like to make some comments? Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I would just briefly say I think it's a reasonable request. We've had 2 pet-related stores not do well there, which I never like to see, but that is a surprisingly restrictive covenant that could only be pet-related. So I'm certainly glad we're opening that up. I do think we might, as a city, need to take a look at our office ordinance, because I do think there are some office uses that we should be considering for vacant retail space. And if we think our current ordinance is a bit clumsy, such that we're afraid of some uses that might be conditionally allowed if findings are met, I think we should look at that, because we have a bit too much vacancy on Wheeler Plaza, Transit Village, etc. So I don't think that applies here. I'm glad the leasing agent thinks the uses we are going to allow are adequate here. But I do think going forward, we should keep an open mind about office uses when we're confronted with retail vacancies on a long-term basis. But otherwise, I support this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. Councilmember Palmer Lohan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I was just going to I'm planning to vote in favor of this tonight. What I appreciated about the staff report and Andrea's presentation tonight was just the changing dynamics of our business community. And one of our goals is to ensure that we are a business friendly community. So I think it's reasonable that we take a look at updating this so as to allow a currently vacant storefront to potentially have a thriving business. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer-Lohan. Any other comments? Councilmember Collins, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to speak?
No, I'm just going to make the motion if no one else wanted to speak.
I'm going to make one comment and say that I too plan to support this ordinance. I appreciate staff's recommendation. This is a retail site that's surrounded by retail, so I appreciate that the recommendation is to keep it as retail. I do want to make one tangential comment that this site and the general area surrounding it has been increasingly experiencing more trash and litter. And so I just wanted, since Ms. Santana is on the phone with us, I just wanted to mention that any, opportunities to clean that up outside, I think would be beneficial to the tenants and just making it kind of a nicer area to visit and shop at. So with that, go ahead, Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to introduce ordinance number
1577.
1577, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos, amending ordinance 1363 for the planned development zoning district for the property located at 1129 Old County Road, APN 046-171-150.
I'll second that.
Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer-Lohan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
And Mayor McDowell?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to item 9, study session. Discuss and provide input on the design of the new field lighting at Flanagan Field at Burton Park and Stadium Field at Highlands Park. We recognize that Vice Mayor Rack needs to recuse himself from the discussion on Burton Park. And Amy, I believe that's the first part of your presentation. So should Councilmember Rack drop off now?
Yes.
Okay. Adam, we'll call you back when we're finished. Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, I will turn it over now to Amy Newby, our Parks and Rec Director.
Okay, good evening, Mayor McDowell, Vice Mayor Rack that just left, council members and community, Amy Newby, Parks and Recreation Director. Tonight, you will hear an update on the design of the new field lighting at Burton and Highlands Parks. We have our consultants from Salas O'Brien joining us tonight. We will first go through the project at Burton Park, take council questions and public comment specific to Burton Park, and then we'll do the same for Highlands Park, again, taking council questions and public comment. Before we get into the design of the field lighting, I would first like to take a few minutes to walk you through the environmental impact report process that took place a few years ago and bring you up to speed on where we are today. The EIR process began in November 2016 with a report to City Council on the EIR. Council directed staff to proceed with the project and approved a contract with LSA Associates to conduct a full EIR. In May and June of 2017, a notice of preparation for the draft EIR was issued and available for public review, and the city held a public scoping meeting. From November 20th, 2017 to February 28th, 2018, the draft EIR was circulated for a 100-day public review and comment, and on December 6, 2017, the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Commission held a public hearing to consider the current project plan and to take public comment on the draft EIR. On November 13th, 2018, City Council certified the EIR for the Burton and Highlands Parks project and approved a professional services agreement with Salas O'Brien to design phase 1 of sports field lighting project at Burton and Highlands Park. In fall 2019, the city completed the replacement of existing field lighting at Madsen Field and Lower Highlands Field. And more recently, on August 23rd, 2021, City Council approved a professional services agreement with Salas O'Brien to design phase 2 of the project. In November, the city mailed out meeting notices to approximately 500 surrounding neighbors of both parks. And on December 6th, Salas O'Brien presented the 65% design drawings to the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Commission. I will now turn the presentation over to Hugh King, who is going to guide us through the design. And Hugh, I will advance the slides for you.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. So what I'm going to walk you through here is Burton Park. And so this first slide here is showing what we did in the first phase of the project. So on the left photo, you see new LED fixtures that went in, and we also put in some lighting on the backstop for egress off of the bleachers. So emergency lighting off of that, which was required. Just giving a standard look at what those lights look like. Next slide, Amy, please. And so this is showing the site plan, which shows phase 1 there on the left and phase 2, which is where we are in the current design right now. And so this phase 2 of the project will include these 6 additional fixtures or 6 additional poles that will be going in with the lighting control system. We'll also be, so there'll be some additional trenching and a new feed to backstop lighting again where the bleachers are. And go ahead on to the next slide, Amy. And so with this, similar to the previous phase 1, the goal for the field lighting, we're aiming for an average lighting level of 50-foot candles in the infield and 30-foot candles in the outfield. And that's what we're meeting right now. And what I've shown here is you see an average of what we're meeting with minimum and maximum values as well for the infield and outfield. And these meet standard lighting practices for these type of playing. What we're shown additionally on the horizontal and vertical underneath, these are the values at property lines, at the closest property lines in the neighborhood. So where, if you look on the left, that red line that's drawn surrounding the field, that is the property line that we are looking at and grabbing the light levels at those points. So at the closest property lines. So with the field levels at a 50 and 30 foot candle level, at the property line, we were looking at 0.0164 and 0.0359 at those levels, with minimums at 0 and maximums at those levels. So very, very, very low. So that's just one of the showcase that. Amy, you want to go to the next? So you want me to touch on this, Amy?
Sure.
Yeah. So from our previous meeting, there were some additional recommendations provided. There's new batting cages that are currently going in at Flanagan Field. And so as part of the system, as we're putting in these new light system, new lighting controls, so a new power system was to add additional lighting for the batting cages so that they can be used more frequently. And the second part was that since this is a separate park, was to install or to move forward with the Burton system and the Highland system separately.
So if we want to take a minute for questions and comments for the Burton Field lights. And I will just reiterate Hugh's last point was that the commission did, which we are doing this evening, is take each park, consider it on its own.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Hugh. I'll open it up to my colleagues for questions. Councilmember Palmer Lohan.
Thank you. One of the concerns expressed by community coming into the meeting tonight was, on the one hand, we recognize that there's a lot of demand for our recreational facilities and fields in particular. There's 2 concerns that I heard. One is around, the potential for harming insects with these lights. The other one was with the increased field use, what that would do to the durability of the grass fields, and making, kind of an interest in wanting to make sure that, we stay steadfast with grass field under these conditions. So thank you.
You want me to tackle the bugs first? The first question. So that was a question that was brought up during the commission meeting, and so we did do a little bit of digging into that and looking at working with the vendor who we went with on the first phase. And so the idea was, or the request was, to try to lower the color temperature of the lights. So how warm versus how blue or white the lights are, to try to reduce those, which that was alluded to in an article that there was some negative effects to some insects. And so the standard that we've been using in all the fields that we've installed is around 5700 Kelvin, 57K and 5700K. And in talking with the manufacturer, they have indeed done some lower on very, very few fields. And what would happen is, if we were to try to lower, we would have to, it would affect the light levels on the field. So that 50-foot candles and that 30-foot candles that we're trying to get for playability on the field, by lowering the color temperature, we would have to increase the quantity of lights on the poles. So what that would do is that would most likely increase spill lighting into the neighborhood. It would increase the cost of the installation. And what it also would do is, you would now have, where one field is at the 5700, which we did in phase one, we would now have another field area that would have a different color temperature. And so you would get, it would look very awkward. It would not look clean as a clean installation. So we did look at, it as an option, but it did not seem a very viable option for this. And what we looked at was, instead, having it timed, having it on a set schedule, what seemed to be the better method for controlling the impact to, the insect population.
Great, thank you.
And then in terms of do you want me to address the grass field and concerns about lights on that?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Well, first, I want to just recognize that Madsen Field at Burton Park is a natural grass field that has had lights on it for decades. And through our annual and routine maintenance practices of that field, we are able to maintain it at a safe and playable condition with lights and with the existing use. This was also a comment that was addressed throughout the environmental impact report process. A response was provided in that document in the EIR. I can read an excerpt from it now, or I can wait until the Highlands field. It was related more to stadium, but there's two grass fields that we're potentially lighting.
Yes, let's wait until Highlands, because I think that's where this specific concern was addressing. I got a little ahead of myself, so
that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Councilmember Dugan for a couple questions.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate the overview, and question for you, Hugh. So I guess I was surprised to hear that 5700 was the Kelvin temperature. I've been involved in a few commercial installations of LED lights, and I've always found anything over 4000 really not recommended and very blue, very harsh. So I think my involvement's been more interior. Is that right? 5700 really is a standard for exterior lighting like this, and it is, what you've done on most projects?
Correct. Yeah, for sports field lighting, yes. But to your point, if we were doing pathway lighting or exterior building, we would be at a lower level. But when you're playing on the field, we find that a higher Kelvin temperature imitates natural light, obviously a little bit better. And so that's the intent is for the players to have a more realistic playing field. And it also what it improves too is for any type of recording or televised, or if anybody's trying to videotape the sport, the higher Kelvin temperature also aids in that as well.
Okay, could you just briefly characterize, I mean, how common is 5700?
And all this is not a unique Musco lighting system that we're putting in. This is a standard that we've done. I've also put in the Qualight lighting system as well. And that was also, I believe it was at 5,000. So it might've been a slightly lower, but that was not an LED system. But all the previous Musco systems have been using their standard lighting system. But this is not a unique color temperature that we're specifying for this field.
Okay, thank you. And then quickly, Amy, did you, so this is phase 2. How would you characterize the neighbor public reaction, et cetera, to phase 1?
Sure. Phase 1 and throughout the EIR process, we have not heard many comments from the Burton Park neighbors. The comments we're receiving mostly are from the Highlands Park neighbors. Once we did the phase 1 of the project and switched out the old lighting to the new LED, we have heard nothing but great comments from neighbors, from the field users in the evening, even neighbors up the hill from Highlands Park have provided us with positive feedback and comments about the new lights and how less of a glare and less light spillover they're experiencing in that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. You asked one of my questions, so that was great. I'll go ahead and jump in. I don't see any other hands raised by my colleagues. A couple questions. On slide 5, it looks like there is maybe 1 or 2 lights inside the batting cages. I don't know if we can go back to that slide. I just wanted to better understand, is there one kind of overhead light, or is that the batting cage that we're looking at? Could you explain that a little bit, please?
Sure, certainly. So what I've circled in red here, those are going to be the pole lights. And so the middle right one, that is right next to the corner of the batting cage, correct? So the batting cage is the rectangular that is just to the right of it. That's the new batting cage that's going in.
So that larger rectangle is the bullpen and kind of a warm-up area.
Yeah, in between the two top right fixtures, that is the bullpen area.
I see. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then on the next slide, on slide 6, could you just walk me through, I don't really understand those figures. Could you walk me through those calculations and what they mean kind of in real life to
Sure.
neighbors?
Yeah, so what that means is, so typically for, let's start with the first row. So that field levels, those are what, again, those are 50-foot candles. So everything on this table is in the same units. Foot candles is what we're using to measure it. If we were to use a light meter, that it would be the quantity of light hitting the meter that we could measure. So the intent is here that we have a playing field that we're trying to hit certain values so that it's safe, so that it's nice to use. So that first row is what we're hitting. Those are meeting standard levels. If you wanted to go to a lower, that would not be used for, say like club. These are levels here are used for like a club or a high school level. Professional, they go much higher. And so these are an average level that we put on fields all throughout the bay. What we do is we want to model. So we use a software we place the lights, and Musco can specifically aim on each of these poles. They have multiple fixtures, and these fixtures are trying to provide a uniform lighting level on the field. So with their software, they are measuring the field, and then they can also measure outside the field. And the goal here is that we're in the design, we're trying to increase or have a uniform level on the field while at the same time minimizing the amount of spill that is outside the field. So the point of this table is to show that, yes, on the field, we're hitting those good values that we want to hit. And then outside of the field, we are dropping almost to nothing. And just to give you an example, if we were to provide the minimum amount of pathway walking light, we would be at a 0.5. Typically on a campus, we're designing to 1 to 2 foot candles. So this level that you're seeing here is extremely low. Street lighting underneath the street light will provide much more lighting than this will be in the, underneath the street light, you will probably in the 5 to 15 foot candle level. So the point is that the reason that neighbors were so much happier with the new system that came in is that the LED lights that are being installed are so much more directional than the previous fixtures, which were, if you look at a field and they have the roundish lens, those were using a metal halide fixture, and they had a lot more spill that was happening, even with the shields that you could add. The LED light is on a board with specific diodes that are pointed out and aimed out, so it helps with reducing the spill.
I understand that. Okay.
And so I guess one more thing just to clarify on the horizontal. Horizontal is if you were to measure on a flat plane, that horizontally, that's the values. And vertically is if you were to measure like off of your chest, what's reaching your face, that would be the vertical levels. So I'm just giving you both measurements.
Okay, I have a couple other questions, but I will probably save them for the stadium field conversation as well. So I guess I will open it up to public comment if my colleagues don't have any other questions. Okay, this is the opportunity to make a public comment on the Burton Park field lighting. And Crystal, is anyone in the waiting room?
Yes, I do see 3 hands. First up is Robert Bollier, followed by Paul Bryant. And Robert, you should be able to unmute.
Great, thank you. Hello, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Robert Bollier. I'm the co-president of San Carlos Youth Softball. And one of my questions is regarding with the bullpen area and the lighting of the batting cages. I understand from the presentation tonight that there will be lighting added to the batting cages. Can that be extended down through the bullpen area? And also, will that be switched separately from the field lights? And then the final part is when will the project start? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Amy, could you give a quick response to that? Actually, he touched on a couple of things that I meant to ask as well.
Sure.
About the batting cage lighting and the control options. So.
Yes, so commissioners did want council to consider lighting the batting cages. And our intent would be to light them similarly to the tennis courts, where we have a set timer that lights can be on until this time, and users can go into the cages and turn the timer on an hour at a time to use the cages during when it's dark.
Okay, and then he asked when is the start date for this project?
Oh, right. So we're going to wrap up the design by spring, and funding for construction is currently budgeted in the next fiscal year, starting July 1st, 2022.
Thank you, Amy. I see council member.
Our plan is to continue to move this forward during that timeframe.
Okay. Councilmember Collins, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to ask Amy, I think the caller said something about a bullpen area. Is that the same as the batting cage? Do the pitchers warm up in the batting cage, or is there a separate bullpen area?
There's a separate bullpen area. I was going to ask you, do you know if any of the existing light poles would light that bullpen area, or would it require additional lighting? I don't know if you can know that off the top of your head.
Yeah, for the bullpen, if we are having them warm up with a catcher, we would want to provide additional lighting. We will have, we could put, one fixture to aim down. We'd have to check the light levels, but just to make sure that the catcher would be able to see the ball coming at them, we would want to add some additional lighting, possibly one other pole, not a sports field light pole, but maybe something smaller like a pathway light pole, something around 12 to 15 foot high, aimed that way. We would have to take a look at it, but right now that is not currently being designed for. But the batting cage is, and to exactly how you describe the control system.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
Amy, if that was determined to be a doable thing, is that something that you'd have the authority to add if it wasn't, if it was within the budget?
Yeah, and I also think just hearing, if there's council direction this evening to move forward with those additional lighting of the batting cage and the bullpen, we can definitely do that.
Well, as a former catcher, I like a lot of light. So I think that'd be a real safety issue. So yeah, we can talk about that later. Thanks.
Thank you, council member. Amy, also, could you remind me, what is the curfew? How late can the lights be on?
The lights go off at 10 p.m. There's some security and safety lighting that will be on that you can talk about those levels that would be on for about 15-20 minutes after that. But their ball field lights go off at 10 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next public comment, Crystal.
Okay, next up is Paul Bryant. You should be able to unmute.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Paul Bryant, and I'm in charge of the St. Carlos AYSO soccer program. And I didn't have any questions, but did just want to provide a brief comment in support of the lights. I think this is very exciting. I think, the sports have definitely been growing in San Carlos over the past years. Having additional lights for the fields will allow us to spread out practice times a bit, reduce congestion on the fields, host additional tournaments to showcase San Carlos, and have some economic benefit there. And in particular, I think lighting up the softball field would be great. As the dad of 3 daughters, getting lights over there would be really fantastic. So no questions, but just wanted to provide that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Crystal, is there another speaker?
Yes, we do have a number. We have 4 of them queued up right now. Next speaker is calling in with a phone number ending in 794. You should be able to unmute. If you're trying to unmute, you can do so by pressing *9. Oh, I just saw that you lowered your hand, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next caller then. John Minton, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I am a strong proponent of the additional lighting. I live around the block from the Burton Park field, and I have two kids who have gone through Little League starting at age 5 up through age 12. I'm also happen to be a former president of San Carlos Little League and coach for many years, so very familiar with the scheduling difficulties that we've faced over the years, trying to get field space and jam it all in with practice times getting earlier and earlier in the day. And I think that has been very difficult for working parents in particular. I think adding additional lighting will be great for many, many families in San Carlos to make practices work better. And I agree with the former commenter. We do have a lot of efforts to balance field space in San Carlos, and the additional lighting should help with that. We have seen a decline in Little League numbers in the last few years. And I think anything we can do to get more folks out there. I think the new cages are looking fantastic, and lighting for those. I also wanted to chime in support of that and the bullpen area. Anything we can do to improve the quality and getting kids out there at night should help both families and kids. Kids also love playing at night. It's just exciting, and they love to be out there. So strong proponent. I'm going to hang around and comment in favor of the stadium lighting as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Crystal, I'll turn it over to you to call on the next person.
Yes, we have Mark Reynolds, who will be followed by Michael Donahue. Mark, you should be able to unmute. There you go.
You bet. Hello. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. So I'm a San Carlos City resident since 2003. I can't believe it's been that long. I have 3 kids who have grown up through that time, ages 11, 14, and 17, and all have been involved in some aspect of youth sports, San Carlos United, AYSO, or San Carlos Little League. And I have a passion for youth sports, for kids. And as a result, I'm now on the board of San Carlos Little League and now serving as the president, taking over from Mr. Minton, who just spoke before me. And I really just want to reinforce what both Paul and Don said. All those comments I want to reiterate. And the one thing I want to add that is near and dear to my heart is what I also feel the lights will do is to help defer and deter vandals, as it happens in other places like Arteguello. And even recently, it happened at the Flanagan Field to the softball sheds where they got broken into. So I do believe strongly that the lights will help deter the vandalism at Burton Park, which I think is really important for the safety of our community and the city. So I am all in favor of this effort and project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. We have 2 more hands up. Michael Donahue, who will be followed by Allison Hu. And Michael, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Hello, Madam Mayor and council members. So I've been a resident of San Carlos for about 20 years. I have 3 kids, 19, 17, and 9, 2 girls and a boy. And all 3 kids have really enjoyed participating in sports here in San Carlos and on our field. It's great. I'm also the VP of our local soccer club, San Carlos United. And over the years, we've had to, unfortunately, limit the number of offers we can make to kids in the town who want to play competitive soccer. And it's primarily because we are kind of limited on field space and practice space. So and over the years, we've come out to support various initiatives to increase the number of fields or the locations of fields. And unfortunately, those haven't gone so well. But I really see this lighting initiative as a great way to, get more use out of our existing fields and give more kids the opportunity to play sports. And I really support the motion and super impressed with those numbers on the sort of the light spillage and how minimal it seems to be. So, hats off to the contractor for finding the right product and taking that concern in mind for, the folks who live around the field. So really think this is a great thing. So thanks for bringing it up and supporting it.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Next up is Allison Hu, who will be followed by Franz Sittelberger. Allison, you should be able to unmute.
Hello. Yes. Hello to the council. Thank you very much for allowing my comment. My name is Allison Hu. I've lived in San Carlos for 10 to 11 years. I have 3 kids. We have played soccer, baseball, softball, basketball, all here. I am currently on the board of AYSO. I've been on the board for a number of years. And I agree with all the previous comments. One thing I did want to add is that in particular, some of our groups are very heavily parent volunteer run. We don't operate without that. And we are seeing that it's very difficult now to get coaches, particularly when a practice has to be at 3:30 in order to squeeze all the teams in. A lot of our parents are working and getting to a practice at 3:30 on a weekday is really challenging. So if we have lights on more fields that could allow us to have practices later, particularly after daylight savings time when it gets dark at like 5 o'clock, that would potentially allow us to get more parents to be able to participate and volunteer. And that would really support these programs because we've really been struggling to get enough parent coaches lately to meet the demand of all the kids who want to play. So that was the other thing that I just wanted to add, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Allison. And looks like our last speaker will be Franz Sittelhuber. Sorry if I'm butchering that. You should be able to unmute.
Good evening, council members, mayor. Thank you for your service to San Carlos. I'm a San Carlos native. I grew up here. I have brought my family here and raised them. I've coached in Little League as well as AYSO. Currently, I'm the treasurer for San Carlos AYSO, as well as the Hometown Days coordinator for our soccer program here in town. I live on Arroyo across the street from Burton Park and compliment the council for installing the first phase of the lighting. I think it has made a huge positive benefit to the use of our park space. Secondly, I think that this initiative to put lights on the Flanagan Field side of the park is a huge asset for San Carlos, enabling additional field space, allowing more practices to happen, allow more teams to be able to use our resources, and certainly proud of being able to focus on increasing lights within the batting cages, which are a super important part of the training for our developing youth, as well as making it safe within the bullpen for pitchers and catchers to work on their training. Number one comment that I have is that not only do we need the lights and the field space at Burton, we also strongly need the field space up at Stadium, despite concerns from local residents, in order to really provide an environment in which makes San Carlos a great city to live in and to bring our kids up. Despite any of the objections, I think what we need is to provide that place for those kids to develop the skills, have the opportunity for the parents to volunteer, and create unobstructed access from the time frame that our families all need to be able to make it great. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz.
Thank you. And we do have one more hand that just came up. Jeff, you should be able to unmute. Oh, and his hand was lowered, so I believe that is it for this portion.
Okay, I will open it up to council discussion at this point. Councilmember Palmer Lohan.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate the discussion and the public for presenting their perspective on this. I would also be in favor of expanding the scope of the lighting to include the bullpen. I was a softball player many years ago, and I pitched once. So, you know, brought back a great memory to think about that. But given Councilmember Collins' role as a catcher, I'll defer to his expertise on the need for safety with lights.
Any other comments? Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and certainly appreciate everyone who came out tonight to speak on this issue. That input's very helpful. And I do support this project. I think it's a good addition. I'm glad to hear there were no significant concerns coming out of phase one. That's a good data point. My one concern was the high Kelvin temperature, and I'm glad to hear that's a accepted standard. So I'm very supportive, and I also support a modest increase in scope. Get that bullpen lit as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was in support of this when we visited the issue when I was on the Planning Commission 30 years ago, and I'm even more in support of it now. I'm glad to see it's moving forward. I just have one question. My mind might have drifted, Amy, when you said that when this would be implemented.
We'll be wrapping up the design in the next few months, and the budget for construction is currently budgeted in next fiscal year, starting July 1st. So we do have plans to continue to move this forward on that timeline.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing this move forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Collins. I too support adding lighting to the bullpen and the batting cages. So hopefully you have enough direction on expanding that scope, Amy. And I too support adding lights here. As you know, the mental health of our youth is really important to me. And I think that getting kids out there and being active and participating in sports and being with friends is so crucial to their mental health, especially coming out of the pandemic. So I support increasing the time that they're able to play on the fields by moving this lighting project along. Amy, is there any other information that you would like from council on this item?
No, I think we are good with Burton Park and we can move forward.
Okay, wonderful. Crystal, would you be able to call the Vice Mayor back, please?
Yes, I've just sent him a text.
Thank you. Okay, I see the Vice Mayor has rejoined us. Welcome back, Adam. And Amy, if you'd like to begin the presentation, please go ahead.
Welcome. Welcome back, Vice Mayor Rack. Hugh, if you want to get started on that, on the Highland side.
Certainly. So here what we're showing is the phase one final installation of the lights at Highlands Park. So you get to see the light poles that went in here that are going around, and we put in 13 of these at Highlands in phase one. So you want to go to the next slide. So this is just another photo showing those poles that are going towards the stadium side now, showing again a few of those additional light fixtures that went in. You see that we did put in that some of these fixtures do have pathway lighting. On the right photo, you can see pathway light fixture that is a little bit lower, aimed for general lighting around that area. Additionally, those lights were used since they were closer to the bleachers. Those were actually the fixtures we used for the egress lighting off of the bleachers in case of an emergency. You want to go to the next one, Amy, please? So this is showing overall site plan. So phase one on the left, phase two on the right. And then go to the next slide. We'll zoom in a little bit. So here, this is circling the 9 fixtures that are being designed for currently for Highlands. And what else? I think that's, in general, that's just showing this is going to be the exact same style fixtures that were installed in phase one, just a smaller field, so a few less lights than necessary from phase one. And then go to the next slide. So here, again, going into the light levels that we're aiming for. So again, that same 50-30 foot candles for the infield, 50-foot candles for the infield, 30-foot candles for the outfield. I didn't put a separate column or row here, but for the soccer field, the average we're going for is 50-foot candles. And then the min and max there, again, within acceptable ranges for uniformity on the field. And then here, you know, we realized this was a higher sensitivity area, and we really worked on reducing the spill lighting. And you can see that it's that the property lines for some of the houses are even closer. So these levels are, you know, are very, very low. I mean, I had to go out to several decimal points to get the average here. But again, very, very minimal spill lighting at the very beginning of property lines. Horizontal, again, being if you're measuring on a flat plane, and then vertical is if you were to measure off of like your chest or, you know, at your face. So these were actually all taken at horizontal was at ground level, and vertical was at a 3-foot mark. Next slide, please. And so this is just showing an example of the style of lights that are going in. It shows a little, so that left photo is the actual installed fixture at Highlands in phase 1. And the right side is just kind of showing that a large view of what the components are, the style of pole that goes in. It's a concrete post with a steel structure that slips on side over that concrete pier, and then that an enlarged view of what these LED lights, these light fixtures look like. And you can see that each pole has several of them that are individually aimed, and they're modeled prior and then aimed and then re-aimed just in case there's any items that fall out of alignment. And next slide, please. And
so similarly to Burton Park, is the commissioners also recommended lighting of the batting cages at Stadium Field, and then also as we're considering these two fields independently in the project. And with that, if we have any council questions or comments.
Councilmember Collins, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Amy, the situation around the stadium field is a bit different than down at Burton Park, and particularly the Coleman Court area. And I'm wondering, I assume that there are day games played up on that stadium field now. And do people park on that Coleman Court area? And if so, do we get comments or complaints from the neighbors due to additional, you know, more parking because of the events that are up there during the day games?
Yes, cars parked there. I don't get comments from the Coleman Court neighbors complaining of that. With that said, during the EIR process, I do recall this being a topic of discussion. I don't have all the information that I can pull for you now or share that with you. But it was a comment that was provided when the draft EIR was available for public comment. And it is included, I'm almost certain it's included in one of the response to comments in that document that's online.
I'm wondering, I don't even know if this is enforceable, but since that I've been on Coleman Court, it's rather narrow and it's a very short court. And I don't know if this again would, you know, just move the problem, but is it possible to put up signs that say no field parking for Coleman Court during night games? I know it's kind of refined. I know it's an enforcement issue, but is that something that we can explore, or has it been considered?
I'm sure council can explore that. It's not being considered right now.
Okay, and then the other question I had was, do you believe that there's any capability on the other side down by the other two existing lighted fields of adding any additional parking, or is that pretty much at its maximum right now?
We would have to look at, I think, Highlands Park as a whole. It's something we have not done yet, so I don't want to kind of just speculate without really looking into that and having maybe Stephen observe that, give some input and recommendations. But that's definitely something that council can also consider staff doing a study to see if that's feasible of adding parking to Highlands.
Okay. I'll be interested to hear what my fellow council members say. Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm done for now.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hugh, thanks for the presentation. I obviously didn't hear the Burton Park side of it, but can you just give me, and I apologize that this is probably going to be a little bit of repetition for my colleagues, but can you give me a little bit more detail upon on the LED lights themselves and kind of the, you know, are there concerns about, I got a comment from someone in the public, a resident who said, oh, there's certain LED lights that maybe either attract more bugs or might be sort of harmful to insects and stuff. I say this because we have an item later on about sort of expanding beekeeping and concerns about that. And so it's sort of related, not that bees are out at night necessarily like that, but that would be just sort of understanding kind of the types of LED lights we're having and sort of how much they're projected, sort of the light pollution basically, you know, and how much we're maybe looking at. And maybe if you can compare kind of what the original lights at Highlands versus what we're looking at now as a good example of that. And I know that's probably helpful for me versus everybody else. They may have asked you that already. So.
Yeah, I mean, we started to touch on it. Yeah, so that was something that was brought up previously on our commission, and we did look into it. We had some time to look into it for this this meeting, and that was something. Again, so we were directed towards an article that was talking about a study that was showing that there may be some lighting that affects the insect population. And the idea was the recommendation was trying to reduce the color temperature of as much as possible. And so we did look into that. And again, what we were showing is we're trying to hit certain light levels. And though we could get specialty lights that are not common, that would have to be ordered special for this. It has been done, but again, by lowering the temperature of the fixture. So right now we're at 5,700. If we lower them, that actually affects the light output on the field. And so we would have to actually increase the quantity of fixtures on the pole. And so what happens is we would be looking at an increased quantity of fixtures on the poles, so increased cost. We would be looking at possibly additional spill lighting caused by those additional fixtures. And on top of that, it would be a different color light fixture than what is on phase one. And so you would have mismatched fields. So there was a lot of issues. And again, these are standard light fixtures that we are putting on there. There's nothing special about them. That these are the type of fixtures that we are putting on, or that are being installed by all the sports field, new sports field lighting fields.
Okay, that's helpful. And just in terms of the sort of, I want to say the sort of extra light pollution that may be, yeah, I'm guessing with some of the LEDs that it's going to be, would be, if I took Highlands sort of when your original Highlands lights in the phase one, that we're looking at it sort of being less light pollution than maybe there was when the lights were originally installed at Highlands. Is that
absolutely? Yeah. So what the style of light? So originally, what the style of fixture that you would have would be a lamp, so like a bulb of some sort that would go into a fixture and as like a parabolic lens and possibly a shield that helps aim the light from that bulb. All right. And so you have light that is being reflected and refracted in lots of different ways, and the shield and the lens is what's trying to aim it. What the huge advantage of LED is those are individual diodes that are on a flat board that are aimed in one direction. There's nothing that is, that by creating the LED board, you are actually creating you're aiming the light itself. So it has a lot better reduction in spill than the previous lights. I mean, in order of magnitude, it is much better than the previous metal halide, what the previous light types were. And so, and not only that, the previous lights were typically at 1500 watts, and these are all the highest fixture that we run is, I believe, is 1,000 now, and most of them are under that too. So where there is also an energy reduction that is happening due to these new fixtures that are being installed.
Great, thank you. That's super helpful. Thank you. Madam Mayor, I had one super fast question, I think, which is probably more Amy related, if I can, and then I'll yield back my time if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Amy, and this is, I think I'm going to speak about Highlands in this, but I think in general, just about the lighting, is there a way with this new lighting or making sure that we're, when games or they're not being used, do we have the ability to turn them off sooner? We're not sitting there with, having the lights on, the fields are empty, and then we're just sort of wasting energy and creating more light pollution. So is that something that, and maybe that's just a management aspect from the Park and Rec department for that, but I'm just kind of curious around that because I've kind of seen that before where I will drive and see empty fields and lights blaring all over the place.
Sure. So our current process right now is our youth sport organizations that are requesting field lights work with our athletics coordinator to schedule those at least 1, if not 2 weeks out in advance. So we're scheduling them out 2 weeks in advance. If those practices or those games change and it's not communicated back to our department, there is going to be a time where the field is not have an active game or practice, but is still lit. With the new lights from Musco, we do have the technology now where we have the capability remotely to turn them on and off. So there's that kind of backup feature, which we don't want to rely on, but we can do on a case-by-case basis. Hugh, maybe that's something we can look into is on our timer, is there some sort of deactivation switch that users can press if their practice ends early? They know they're the last practice, they're done at 8:45 instead of 9 or 9:30. Can they turn them off on their way out? That's something we can look into. Hugh, I don't know if you have an answer right now, but.
Yeah, so that a manual switch is available. Currently, the way we have it is it's behind a locked door just because of security reasons so that no one else can go up there. So, but if someone has the key to the enclosure, which is next to the restroom on the lower fields, get in there, they can definitely turn off the lights earlier.
So that would require maintenance or some sort of staff on site. So, if that is something we can also bring back and discuss at our ASAC meetings, which are bi-monthly meetings that take place with all of the youth sport organization representatives and our staff, just kind of fine-tuning that process.
That's super helpful. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you. Councilmember Palmer Lohan.
Great, thank you. Amy, could you talk a little bit about the addition of lighting to this field and the durability of the grass field and what you expect the usage to be? And there's concern that perhaps the grass won't hold up to, extensive usage with the lights.
Yes, so that has been a concern throughout the process. And I do want to reiterate again that in our community, under the supervision and management of our maintenance division, we do have a grass field that has been lit for decades. But this was a comment that was provided when the draft EIR was available for public review and comments. And then the response from our legal counsel provided a response in terms of this. So I'm going to read an excerpt from the response to comments draft EIR because it is a bit technical. and it was something that was studied and reviewed a few years ago in the EIR process. So it states, while sports activities are a large part of the residents' use of the parks, the city also supports the concept of open space and open time at its parks outside of organized sports. Synthetic turf serves the purpose of supporting year-round sports activities because it can withstand inclement weather conditions and is not burdened by recurring maintenance and excessive use. The proposed project, however, does not encourage more intensive use than already occurs and would not make it reasonably foreseeable that artificial turf will be required. Highlands Field, located within Highlands Park, is an artificial turf field and is available for those activities that are best suited for artificial turf, such as use by teen and adult teams. Moreover, natural grass encourages uses different from those that are best suited for artificial turf, and the additional hours of access provided by the lighting improvement project will allow residents to engage in those other types of uses. Some examples are residents taking after dinner walks around the field, allowing residents and their pets on leash to enjoy the expansive space for play or picnicking. Please note that the city prohibits pets and food on all artificial turf fields, and utilizing the field for play such as cartwheels, kite flying, and non-competitive races. These uses would not be as equally desirable on an artificial turf surface. Therefore, the installation of LED lights alone on grass field does not make it reasonably foreseeable that the city will install artificial turf on the Highlands Park grass field.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. Amy, I had a couple questions for you as well. Could you talk a little bit about the phase 1 feedback specifically on the Highlands lights that you've received or heard since installation?
The feedback on those, the majority of the feedback that we're getting from the Highlands Park Stadium Field neighbors is that they don't want the lights. That's the general feedback. Sorry.
Yeah, I was asking phase 1 of the new lights were installed in the lower field. You had alluded to it during the Burton Park conversation, but just for the benefit of the group, yes. I'd like to hear what you say.
Once the phase 1 project was complete, we've heard nothing but positive comments about the improvement of the light spillover and the glare coming from that field. I do recall when the lights were completed and turned on, we did get calls and emails from one neighbor. I'm blanking on the street that he lives on. It's above the hill from Highlands, so he looks down onto the field, and there was a fixture that was glaring into his window, and he had beautiful bay windows that looked out into the East Bay. We were able to go up into his home, identify what fixture it was. We had our contractors back on site in the next day or two, adjusted that fixture a few degrees, and it solved the problem. So I think also this technology is so precise that, we're able to fine tune it so that it creates less glare, less spillover into the surrounding homes. And just again, reiterating the slide that you provided that shows those light levels, the horizontal and vertical light levels are very minimal.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, one resident wrote in and asked if it's possible to run these lights on solar power. And I'm wondering what your research has shown on that.
We haven't done a whole lot of research on that. I would see that being its own project, requires some study, some design, and additional funding for that. Hugh, I don't know if you've had any experience in solar.
Yeah, so we've done solar pathway lighting, and those typically have their own battery system that is installed with the pole. With these, even though there is a reduction overall of the lighting system from past ones, you would need a fairly large battery system to store the energy during the day to be able to run all that for the few hours that they're running. So never have created a system like that. The battery system would probably be fairly large and would take up a bit of space. I mean, solar parks are, popular as shade canopies over parking and stuff like that. But nothing to offset. I've never looked at the offset just for sports field lighting before like that. No.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. I don't see any other hands raised from my colleagues, so I'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. If you would like to make a public comment on Highlands Park field lighting, directions are on the screen to raise your hand or call in. Crystal, are there any members wishing to speak?
Yes, we have 9 hands up at the moment. First up is Jessica Slater, followed by Fred Im. Jessica, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So I'm at 1 Coleman Court. So I am the house that you walk past and you're taking the Fire Road up to Stadium Field. My fence borders that. And I think the difference between where we are and Burton is you have a number of homes that are directly on the park as opposed to across the street. So I had one comment, I had one question for the lighting gentleman, and then I had a comment. I worry I'm facing that field. Now you said there's no spillover and I get that, but now I'm going to have 5 big tall lights that are, I understand there's no spill from to the sides, but what about out? I'm now looking at 4 huge towers of lights that are going to be, I'm worried of the surface of the sun outside of my son's bedroom. So can you talk about the distance of lighting and how that affects the neighbors?
Certainly. So when we did those values that we're giving are for as if all the lights are turned on for the fields. So those values of the spill lighting coming from all those poles, no matter which ones, they're all included in those calculations. So, and again, I'm trying to visualize exactly which house, but the values that we took were based off of all the closest to, and
one of those, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and so perfect. So one of those houses, we're measuring from the edge of your property closest to the field. So I can't give you an exact number, but as you go even a little bit further, you're reducing the light levels that are continuing.
Okay.
So it at your property line is already very, very low. We've shifted some of the lights to actually reduce that as well. So those values you're seeing are the values the max you would possibly see at your house.
Okay. Yeah, I did look at it because I was concerned that one of the lights would be way too close to, I'm right at the juncture, and I thought, oh no, I'm going to have a light, the tower right there. But I see that it's a little further.
Okay. Yeah, and again, all that lighting is for the lights that are closest to you. All the light from those fixtures is pointing away from your house. So in actuality, the most light that you would be seeing on your property is actually the light from across.
Right.
And that is one of the nice things about these new fixtures is because you don't get that glow that you would get on the older style fixtures.
Okay. I know I messed up the 2-minute timer. I'll try to be respectful, but the second issue I'm having, I have 2 kids, they're 12 and 14, so I'm not indifferent. And I know there are a ton of soccer and baseball coaches on here who I love and respect for all they do, but there's a difference between, so yes, this road is insane, Coleman Court coming up on Vista del Grande, Coronado Ave. It's really narrow, it's really tight, but I think and there are people that park here during the day, but the day is the day. I don't mind the day, there's noise from the park, there's whistles, I get all that, but now at night, we're a quiet neighborhood that now has people traipsing along the Fire Road, going to their cars in this neighborhood. I know it's a time where kids can play, but it's also a time where we're having family dinner and where kids are doing homework. And I hear teenagers in the middle of the night, you know, whatever they're doing, and they're loud. The sound echoes, and it's loud, and I can't imagine there being games there and then having all this traffic getting into their cars in our neighborhood to go home. I mean, I just think the noise pollution at that point is making my house, you know, not pleasant. So I did want to make you think about the nighttime noise and not just the parking.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate your comments. Crystal, do we have another speaker?
Yes, we have 10 queued up. Next is Fred Im, followed by Richard Crone. Fred, you should be able to unmute. There you go.
Hi, my name is Fred Im. Thanks for hearing my comments. I actually, I live in Highlands as well, and Jessica's my neighbor, and hopefully she's not mad at me. I will say, you know, we all participate in our own way. I was the commissioner for AYSO. I am currently representing St. Carlos United, the local soccer club. My kids are 11 and 14. They both play Little League and soccer in this town. But we are talking about 100% volunteer-run organizations. And who those volunteers are basically, these are all parents who live in our town who are getting out of work early to make a practice. You know, I'll say that, you know, any time after dark that we could have some lights and put some practices on fields that, you know, we currently can't use would be a huge benefit. I mean, it doesn't even have to be till 10 o'clock at night. I mean, you know, honestly, if we could just get some practices on fields late at night, you know, this would help all of our organizations being able to support, you know, our youth sports and getting our kids out on the fields. And, you know, and I have to say, you know, St. Carlos is a huge family-centric city. And these are like the big reasons that you want to raise your kids in this town. They have somewhere to play. They can go out at night, you know, without being worried. And, you know, that things that I think of, you know, like when I look at the new Highlands Light Project, you know, the light spillover is almost non-existent. You know, when those lights shut off, it is dark there. And I would like to think then that if we were to put lights on stadium, we would have something similar, as well as having that path lighting, I think is a huge benefit. Just having something that's not pitch black at night. So anyways, thank you for hearing me. Hopefully my neighbors don't hate me, but I do love this town, and I do love supporting our kids.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you. Next up is Richard Crone, followed by Zinovoy Bichtenholtz. Richard, you should be able to unmute. There you go.
Mayor, council members, city staff, and advisors, thank you for your service and for listening. My name is Richard Crone. I'm a resident of San Carlos and one of the founding members of the Save San Carlos Parks, a citywide group of concerned citizens. The city of San Carlos spent over $100,000 in legal fees to settle a lawsuit with a binding agreement with our organization, Save San Carlos Parks, in September 2010 regarding the removal of natural grass and the installation of synthetic turf in Highlands Park. The settlement we reached in good faith with the city of San Carlos was with the understanding that there would be no lights nor artificial turf at Stadium Field. No lights nor artificial turf at Stadium Field. The installation of lights at Stadium Field is not only a violation of the spirit of our litigated agreement, but it's an underhanded precursor to later ramrod artificial turf at Stadium as well. We asked the City Council to honor its promise with Save San Carlos Parks and remove any consideration of lights at Stadium Field and preserve the natural park setting with natural grass at all our parks. The same arguments that were carefully read to you in legalese were made to try to save the original grass field. And there's artificial turf there now. Again, we ask the council to honor your promise with Save San Carlos Parks and remove the consideration of lights at Stadium Field. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Next up is Zinovi, followed by Heidi.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I also a resident in the Highlands Park on Glasgow, and my comment is also the same concern that this is a precursor to remove grass from the stadium field. This is a very big concern of mine and many people that I do know. Okay. And so is that a commitment that this never going to happen? I heard this today from from somebody on the council. Okay. Is that a understanding that the grass field will stay? I don't hear anything.
This is public comment time, not necessarily a time for the council to respond, sir.
Okay. Sorry. So basically, this is a concern. I also, my comment is that, are you aware that most of the time lights are not on? Today, they're on, but most of the time they're not on. I don't know what schedule they are on. I walk this thing. I live across the street. I walk it every day. I walk my dogs. The lights are mostly off. Okay. So this is the third comment. I say this is all these things are serving a very limited community. Okay, of people with the sports. We support that, but you should know that this is a very limited community. And if they do come, a lot of people come outside of San Carlos for all these games. Okay, so please keep that in mind. That you are serving a very, very limited community by doing these projects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next up is Heidi Liebguth, followed by Frank Sittelberger. Heidi.
Hey, hello. Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I love youth sports, and both my kids played, and my husband and I both volunteered with coaching and other support of the teams. But I must plead with you that Highlands Neighbors already host the city's only lighted artificial turf field, which sees heavy use both day and night. This is already an unfairly concentrated use of recreational activities at this one park, which is not near other recreation downtown or retail that would benefit the city. With its small parking lot and single access point on Aberdeen, Highlands cannot handle a doubling of its nighttime usage. It already sees near constant weekend traffic at the start and end times of multiple practices and games, with speeding cars, double parking, and near misses of children darting across the street. Doubling Highlands' after dark use will benefit not so much our children's youth sports, but every adult league on the peninsula. The city will be incented to schedule paying adult leagues during the nighttime hours, creating even more car traffic and parking problems where there is no parking designated for Stadium Field. Only narrow, dark, twisting streets, already crowded from usage of the two lower Highlands Park fields. Night lighting and increased field usage at Highlands Park would create intolerable congestion, traffic, and noise in a neighborhood that already carries more than its fair share. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Heidi.
Next up is Franz Sittelhuber, followed by Ashok Popat.
Good evening, commissioners. Again, thank you for your service. My comments are pretty straightforward. 35 years ago, San Carlos High School was left destitute as a site of blight. The city took over, created a recreational area, as well as carved out an economic development area for homes to be built on that site. Since then, the city has left the stadium field as an afterthought to a maintainable and good, well-run facility. what I hear from a proposal to install lights are in the right direction of what we need to do with field space for all the people in the city of San Carlos. Things that I want to make sure are thought of and concurred with are, one, as treasurer of San Carlos AYSO, I want to ensure that the memo of understanding for the wear and tear of the field space that we're participant in within our registration fees are maintained, if not properly accounted for, so that we do not have to accrue membership fees from our users to pay for heavy use by groups other than the people who are actually using them. What I would like the city to consider is with the fire trail that runs from the corner at the north or the southeast corner to the northeast corner above the concrete stadium seats, to consider whether they could expand that road in order to enable potentially adding 16 parking spots with a turnaround drive at the northeast corner of that area, increasing the access to the picnic area in the northwest corner of the stadium field. And I want to ensure that as a grass field, which I think is the most important field surface to be played on, that proper maintenance and irrigation issues are attended to, and that we do not get wet spots that are problematic season over season. And I want to applaud the city for approaching the lighting solution to use LED technology that has higher precision and higher energy conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz.
Next up, we have Ashok Popat. You should be able to unmute, and we have 6 callers queued up after that.
Yeah, thanks. So first I want to thank the council for the hard work and the thoughtful deliberation. I also especially want to thank the council. So first of all, I'm a resident of the Highlands neighborhood. I live on Glasgow, and want to weigh in strong support of what Richard and Heidi said. I also want to thank the council for separating the Burton and the Highlands topics. I think that's very wise. I think they're very separate. The neighborhoods are very separate. And as we've heard from some of the comments, we see that the concerns are quite different. I guess it's pretty much, it's not a point of contention that the parking aspects have not been well thought out. I think, the discussion has shown that it's not part of the current plan. And so from that perspective, it would be premature. But from my perspective, what I've seen during the daytime and the spillover and the parking, the last thing we would want to do in this situation, I think, is to try to address the problem by increasing the capacity of this site and having even more, finding a way to have even more traffic in this area is just, it's not compatible with the nature of this neighborhood from my perspective. I also wanted to briefly comment that, there were allusions made to kind of positive comments from uphill neighbors as a result of the original Highlands lighting being replaced. But I just want to point out that that's a very different situation. And I'm not sure it's fully relevant to the lighting of the uphill of the stadium field, because what you're replacing actually is no lights at all, right? So I think that was a little bit off topic back then. So I'm getting to the end of my 2 minutes, but I just wanted to reiterate, I would be cautious here, and I think separating the two, Burton and Highlands, is wise. And let's take advantage of that separation by actually not pushing through something that's premature on the Highland side. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a caller with a phone number ending in 794. You should be able to unmute by pushing *9. It doesn't look like you're able to. Oh. Can you? Hello?
I'm here.
There you go. We can hear
I've
you.
been a homeowner on Coleman Court since 1983. I've attended numerous City Hall meetings to voice my unwavering objections against the lighting of the field at Highlands Park. Few factual points I'm going to make. Number one, The noise level ratings are seriously flawed and incomplete based on the fact they were not measured with adults playing nor measured to the closest impacted homes. Number two, the traffic study is also incomplete and flawed based on the facts there is no established days and hours of field usage, therefore, nor accurate amount of increased traffic on impacted roads that can be measured. In addition, the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, does not allow segmentation of combined projects in close proximity of one another, which would include the large housing project at Vista del Grande and Coronado to be combined. With the proposed lightings of Highlands Park, in the early year 2000 of the park's master plan, it was stated that their true intentions were to convert all, and I quote, grass fields to artificial turf. In completion of my objections, I want a transcript of Judge Weiner's decision and also want Judge Weiner's decision and the associated transcripts to be placed in a public record. As seemingly during the last Zoom meeting, it was readily apparent that numerous Parks and Recreation members were completely unaware and blindsided by the lawsuit and Judge Weiner's decision and ruling. I don't believe that Ms. Newby has the legal background nor the necessary legal verbiage understandings to come to any determination or factual conclusion to advise her fellow colleagues on the contents of Judge Weiner's ruling. I truly believe that Ms. Newby's true intentions, based on her less than transparent dissemination of facts known to her, is to ramrod the lighting project, which is to do a grave disservice to not only her colleagues, but all citizens involved in this matter. Unfathomably misplaced concerns have been voiced by various council members. Where their concerns are more focused on the lighting negative impacts on bugs than the negative impacts of the lights on impacted neighbors.
Sir, your 2 minutes are wrapping up. Would you mind wrapping up, please?
Yes, Ms. Newby uses the ambiguous term foreseeable future in regards to the possibility of artificial turf on Highlands Park Field.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, sir. We're limited to 2 minutes for each speaker. I'm sorry. We're going to need to move on to the next speaker.
Next up, we have Kimberly Balsam, followed by Mark Federighi.
My name is Kimberly Balsam. I have lived in San Carlos for 10 years, and I currently live on Aberdeen, so right across from the turf field and right down from the grass field. I think a lot of important things have been said. As a parent of 3 teenagers who play sports, I really do value the opportunity to have a turf field and have good lighting for that. However, I have to say that I agree with a lot of the concerns of several of my neighbors about potentially converting the grass to turf in the stadium field and also with the lighting down there. And I do really want to echo what several of my neighbors said about this neighborhood being different from Burton. We're not right near downtown. There isn't a benefit to the businesses of San Carlos for having lots of people up here. And increasingly, I think now as we're coming out of COVID and more teams are starting to play, I'm really noticing the traffic, which is a quality of life thing, you know, not just for myself and my older teenagers, but for the many young families that are here. There are a lot of cars double parked, sometimes driving erratically, looking for a place to go. And it just doesn't logically make sense because there is no place to park for that stadium field. So I think that that's a concern. I think the noise is a concern. It's also a quality of life thing for pet owners. There are many people with dogs in San Carlos, and the grass field has been a nice place that it's a nice flat place that people come to from all around here to be able to take their dogs out and run them during the off-leash times. And I think that would be lost. And along with it, some of the, I think, the natural environment that we have in San Carlos. So I think on balance, we'd be better off with turf and lights somewhere else, but not on that field particularly.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you. Next, we have Mark Federighi, followed by Jeff.
Hello, council members. Thank you for taking public comment on this very important topic for our community. It's a sensitive topic for sure, with lots of different opinions and points of view, and it's good to listen to all. I've been a resident of San Carlos since I was a 3-year-old child. Went away, came back to this community to raise my children and have a family. I think our town, since I grew up here, has changed. Back when I grew up, there weren't as many families, there weren't as many kids. It was kind of escape from San Francisco for people to live here. But now, if you look at the census, over 33% of our population are children under the age of 18. So our community has changed, and so has the needs of our city. I do think there are important things to think of. As a volunteer coach for St. Carlos United Soccer Club that's had kids play for me for a number of years, I've since retired from that position. We often had a very difficult time getting field space, and we'd have to try to train kids for competitive soccer within a 50 by 100 square foot slot, which you have 18 teams practicing at the same time. The concern I have with this, as well as things like Little League and other youth sports, is as our population changes, we need to provide for our residents. And what was isn't necessarily what is. And when you look at Black Mountain, that's going to go, and that's going to create more need for children and for space. So I think the city council needs to think about the future and what's best for our city. I do recall times when we had children from San Carlos trying out for our club, but we couldn't have them on our team because we couldn't get more practice time. So we had to send them to neighboring cities to play for their teams. And to me, as a taxpaying resident of this city, I don't think that's fair for our children or for our parents, and they should be able to build community within our area. So I thank the council for the time and listening to the comments, and I know you'll make the right decision for the future, not just for today.
Thank you, Mark.
Next up, we have Jeff, followed by Sonia Elks.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, yes. Hi, this is Jeff. I'm a Highlands Park neighbor, and a lot of my great neighbors have spoken before me, and I love them all, Fred and Richard and Kimberly. But I'm very concerned about the lights at Highlands Park. We already have serious parking issues and serious traffic issues with only one access point. I think that there's also going to be an impact clearly on property values, and you know that with all the houses around Highlands Park, it's gonna be a significant change in character of the neighborhood, which could result in a 5 to 10% impact on values, which we should be building something more in the industrial area of San Carlos, where it can be 24/7. It can help the commercial district. It can help Laurel Avenue. Not in a more natural setting as we have here at Highlands Park. So I think the parking is a big problem. The property values, it just doesn't make sense for a neighborhood like this. And the lawsuit that Richard mentioned back in 2010, in good faith, the city should really respect the lawsuit that we had lots of photographs of the parking and the traffic and we would just like to have the city respect the past lawsuit that we won in 2010, and in good faith it was to not build on the upper field and not put up lights, not put up the AstroTurf. So we hope that you'll take that into consideration. And
thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Your time is wrapping up. I appreciate your comments.
Okay.
Okay, next up we have Sonia Elks, followed by John Minton.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I missed the details on how much light is coming to Highlands Park, but I just want to put my 2 cents in, which is I don't like AstroTurf. I think it's a problem. It's wrong on too many levels. I'm so grateful you're not considering it for the upper park. I understand why we have it down in the lower part, but it's not right. Something's not, please don't do more. And then, but more importantly about the lights, which is what you are considering, and I don't know how bright they are, but I like mood lighting, nighttime, limited light, just enough to see a soccer ball that you can kick around, not daylight bright, a little bit of light, but not a lot, not to encourage big actions, small stuff, enough to see would be adequate. I don't know how else to say it. It is really nice to be able to go out and play soccer with my family at night, but I don't think much good happens after 9 p.m. as a general rule. Fun stuff, but maybe not great stuff. So it shouldn't be super well lit. That's all I can offer, but thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you. Next, we have John Minton, followed by Michael Donahue.
Thank you. I am a longtime San Carlos parent. I have 2 kids who played Little League, starting at T-ball all the way up through majors level, and have coached for many years. I want to echo some of the comments from other coaches and parents who have kids and who have had kids in the past go through the system and have watched it become more crowded on our fields, cramming into the time that we have on a field where we don't have lights. And I think it would do a lot of good to free up some more space, doing what we can. I think having a safety valve like that to get more kids off the couches and away from the video games for their mental and physical health, I just think is so important for our entire community. And I think this is a step in that direction. The lights I've seen that have been done as part of phase 1 are really, really good and seem to be, shining straight down at the field and doing what can be done to minimize disruption to the surrounding area. So I think that's a great mitigation measure. I've heard concerns about what may happen in the future in relation to turf. I think that's a discussion for a later time. I personally, as a baseball person, I love the natural grass and hope that continues. But I think the plan right now is to continue with grass, and I think that's great. I agree the natural setting is beautiful up there, and I wouldn't want to see that change personally. But I think that the plan right now is for grass. So I'm strongly in favor of this, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. And the last hand that we have up right now is Michael Donahue.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, thanks. So you did hear me speak before, in support on the discussion around Burton. And I was just, again, I'll sort of repeat, how impressed I am with the work that the contractor's done. Those light levels were even dramatically less so at Stadium. And I guess it's probably because a lot of the trees and kind of blocked things out quite a bit. And just echo some of the things that John said around, getting our kids out and, playing. And I know it's a sensitive issue for folks in the neighborhood, and I'm down, down the ways. But I think until we do studies, I don't know if there's going to be any change in parking. There's only so many games that can be hosted on those fields. I can't imagine it would be any worse than it is during on a weekend day. And there's more parking actually at Highlands than there is at Burton. We have dedicated parking spots. So I think that helps help, alleviate any issues. And the third comment to maybe address some of the, fellow neighbors' concern is around Stadium. It's really well suited for, our younger kids, not so well suited for, adult matches and things like that. So I don't think we would see an increase in, adult usage up at Stadium. And the city controls the timing of the lights. So, unless a local, city league has got something going on there, I imagine just like the other fields, those lights would be off, which is the right thing to do. If it's not being in use by someone from our city, the light should be off. When it is, then the lights will be on. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael.
And then we do have one more hand that just came up with caller with a phone number ending in 918. You should be able to unmute by pressing *9.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, my name is Steve Kane, and I live on Elston Court, near Stadium Field. So I echo some of the comments from the first person, I believe, that lived on Coleman Court about the challenges if we were to increase the capacity or the access to Highland Park from the stadium side. We already have, in my mind, quite dangerous parking situations during events in the park where people are parking on both sides of Elston Court in particular. And it really prevents access by any sorts of emergency vehicles. So there was an incident several years ago where a fire truck was not able to go down the length of Elston Court and was forced to go on foot to a house where somebody had called 911. So I think there is a real safety concern in addition to the nuisance that it would be creating by having additional people parking, especially at night, where you have residents that are using street parking to locate one of their cars, for example. So the parking challenge, in my mind, is both you're going to create a very negative environment in our neighborhood, but I think above and beyond that, I'm concerned about the safety hazards that would raise. So I thank you very much for the time, and I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one more hand just came up. Karen Molinari. You should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Council. As a obviously lifelong resident of San Carlos and here raising my own family, I do have to say I so appreciate the parks, especially during COVID. They were such a lovely distraction from everything else and gave us the opportunity to get outside and to play and interact with others. My family is a heavy park usage family with all children playing both rec and competitive sports and parents playing sports as well. My concern here in this regard is that the Parks and Rec Master Plan clearly states that their decision and strategy based on the Mahadi report is for all parks to go synthetic turf. And it even says they want to renovate stadium turf and encourage synthetic turf. My concern would be, as we found with Highlands, once lights get put on, the turf degrades. And I would, as other people have said, really like to have the city make the commitment that the turf is going to be maintained as a natural grass setting. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. And that was our last speaker.
Okay, that was a lot of public comments. I'd like to check in with my colleagues. I know we've been sitting here for 2.5 hours. Is there a desire to take a 5 or 10 minute break before we discuss? Yes, I see some nods. Okay, so why don't we take a 10-minute break? We will come back at 9:32. Thank you. So public comment is now closed. I want to thank all of the members of the public who stayed up late and called in. We received a lot of comment. Now it's discussion time among council, so I will open it up to my colleagues. Vice Mayor Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to thank all the public for the comments. It was helpful to hear everyone's perspective on this. If I could, just one clarification question that I had for Greg, and I did want to follow up also on Ron's comments about kind of the parking and maybe kind of looking at some parking solutions potentially where some of those narrow streets are and some of the public safety issues. So I'll start with that, saying I'd certainly be interested if to look at some of the parking aspects of this and see how we might be able to look at supporting some of those neighborhoods that have some narrow streets in terms of navigating parking and public safety, as Ron had requested. And then for Greg, can you clarify for me what is in the agreement with the Save San Carlos Parks in terms of lighting versus, I understand that it is, the agreement is that they would not put turf on stadium, but does it have anything to do with lighting?
Thank you, Council Member or Vice Mayor Rack. One of the benefits of having been the city attorney for a while is I negotiated the settlement agreement, which became a stipulated judgment. So very familiar with it. The agreement does not have any specific restriction on lighting any of the fields. It actually does not have a restriction on the field usage except as specified in the agreement. And then we're in compliance with the agreement. It has a provision that we negotiated that allowed us to go through an environmental review process to modify the terms of the settlement. So we're in full compliance with the agreement.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I just wanted to get that clarification.
I appreciate you bringing that up. Any of my other colleagues have questions or discussion points? Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick one. Amy, we're just talking about lights. I didn't see anything in here. I don't remember anything in any past discussions that lights automatically mean we're going to put turf in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The other question is, there seemed to be an argument that if you put more lights in, you create more playing time. If you create more playing time, it degrades the grass, and therefore you have to put artificial turf in. Well, if that were the case, would we not have replaced the grass at Burton Park on the lighted field by now? I mean, those lights have been there probably 60 years. Am I missing something here? Is there any difference in the grass that we plant at Burton Park? Have we had to spend a lot of money to maintain the grass because there's night play there?
Right. So as mentioned before, as we looked at that in the EIR and as that comment was brought up, and through our routine and annual maintenance practices of Burton Park, we've shown that we can maintain a grass field that's safe to play on, that's lit in the evening for extended play.
Yeah. Okay. That's really all I had for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Palmer Lohan.
Thank you. I really appreciate the public coming out and sharing their perspective and concerns and viewpoints on this. One of the public commenters mentioned the fact that they, live near one of the fields that is lit, and there's oftentimes the lights aren't on, and that's been my experience as well. I live near Burton Park, and it's actually, of all the times I go by at night, it's actually, proportionally fewer that the field lights are on. More often the basketball court or tennis lights are on. So I'm just wondering, what is the potential, capacity or expected capacity? And number of days of year. So for example, summer months, right? The sun is out a lot longer. During the winter months, obviously the days are shorter. So what are we talking about here in terms of, number of days and evenings that we would expect that, both fields would be in use and fully lit until 10 o'clock at night? Do we have any understanding of that at this point?
We do have an estimate. It would probably take me some time to pull it out right now. I wasn't prepared for that number. I could have gathered it. But we look by the season. So the seasons of play, when soccer's in season, when baseball and softball is in season. And then also, obviously, as you mentioned, the time of year, is it daylight savings? And just, so there's expected increase of use just during the seasons where it gets darker earlier, and practices then go into the 6-7 o'clock hour, just being able to have those. I'm sorry, I don't have an estimate of anticipated additional hours of use. I can get that for you.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's variable, right, throughout the year. So it's not as if these lights are going to be on constantly every single night until 10 o'clock at night. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer Lohan. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to jump in with a couple of issues that were raised in public comments, if you don't mind, Amy. One of the commenters thought that by having stadium lit, we would double the usage of the park. And the way I see the park, the lower field accommodates far more teams than the upper field. The upper field would accommodate one baseball game or one soccer game, is my understanding. This kind of builds on what Laura was mentioning. I'm trying to assess the impact, and in my mind, I don't think that it would double, but I'm curious what you think.
It definitely is not going to double. As one of the callers mentioned, there's only certain level of play that's played at stadium. And just as you also mentioned, it's a fraction of the size of the lower field. So there's less teams that can practice on that field at one time that can practice at the lower field. Use is not going to double at one time. Again, these are all data that was studied in the EIR that would just take me some time to pull up, but I'm happy to send that to you. All of this information is also available on our website, on our Parks and Recreation website, under current Parks and Recreation capital improvement projects. And if you scroll down, there's a section in the EIR for improved and additional field lighting and operations of Highlands Field. And it's all the documents that were established in the EIR process that has all that data.
And then just a follow-up question, and then I'll turn it over to Councilmember Dugan for some questions. The youth teams typically practice or have games until 8 or 9, and then typically those people using it later are adult leagues. Like, can you give me kind of a breakdown of the evening hours of typical nighttime usage?
Sure, that's about correct. So youth practices go, depending on, again, the sport, the team, the season, but 8 or 9 p.m. at the latest, and those are the older kids. We do have our adult soccer league that's on the lower field, on the synthetic turf. And that goes until about 10 p.m., depending on the season and the number of teams that participate each season. Games could go until 10 p.m. We don't have any of our adult leagues scheduled at Stadium Field.
Okay, that was what I was getting at, was what, if we have games going later, could we push them to the lower field? But it sounds like the adult leagues would use the lower field and would not use the stadium field.
Correct. Operationally in our programs, like, that's already happening.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy. Councilmember Dugan. You're muted, John.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Amy, we certainly heard from a number of our youth coaches the need for this. And, I am aware that our fields are pretty darn busy. My family's been involved in some of these sports. But what is your characterization of that? I haven't really heard what is your assessment as our director of Park and Recs on the need for this? And, has this need been building for years? Has it been known as something we needed to solve for some time? Or is this a nice to have at this point?
So each year we track our organized play participants, the number organized hours of play per year. I want to kind of compare it to pre-pandemic, as we were seeing quite a few years ago, we saw a significant increase. And then each year it's either a minor increase of the use that we're seeing and we're tracking through all of our youth sport organizations, through our program participants. The youth sport organizations have reported a slight drop in participation since the pandemic. So what you might see out there right now is not what was typical out on our fields before the pandemic. There's some families that are just still slow to return to those sports. With that said, I think in the next few years, I would anticipate being back to those full levels of participation and use of our fields. But it is also important to remember that as we're talking about lighting a natural grass field, is that there's rest time throughout the year. There's rest time throughout the week. So it's not programmed to be scheduled on, every available hour, because we wouldn't be able to maintain those fields. That answers your question.
Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion? Okay. I would actually like to request maybe as this process, when this gets installed, if as we get further on in the process, I would like a check-in on kind of community feedback that you hear, Amy. So that's just something to put a pin in for the future. Any other things, or Amy, do you need any other information from the council since this is a study session?
No, I'll just let you know as we continue to move forward in the design. We will bring back the full design drawings for council to approve and to authorize advertisement of bids for construction. We do anticipate that to be sometime in the spring, late spring.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rack.
Sorry, I want to make sure I was off mute. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make sure too that we captured per Ron's comment before about the parking and kind of looking at some of the opportunities around that. I don't know what the correct solutions are, what the opportunities are, but if that's something that we can continue to look at as some of the neighbors raise some concerns about, that would be helpful as well.
Councilmember Collins, I saw your hand was raised too. Is it on that same issue?
It was, and Adam more or less said what I was going to request, so I'm satisfied.
Okay. I would support looking into that as well. So there's 3. Okay. I see no other hands raised, so I will move on to item 10, new business. Adopting a resolution authorizing an increase to the general fund community events program budget for fiscal year 21-22 in the amount of $80,000 and fiscal year 22-23 in the amount of $132,250 to include the cost of a full-time recreation coordinator and other operational expenses to support the coordination and management of the San Carlos Art and Wine Fair and Hometown Days events. And okay. I assume it's Amy. Yes, Amy again.
Continuing along, yes. So before you tonight is the consideration of adopting a resolution increasing the community events program budget to include the creation of a new full-time recreation coordinator and other operational expenses to support the coordination and management of the San Carlos Art and Wine Fair and Hometown Days event. I would like to begin by providing some background on both of these events. First, in April of last year, City Council approved funds for the city to manage the Art and Wine Fair following the San Carlos Chamber of Commerce ceasing operations in October of 2020. In November of 2021, the city issued a request for proposals for assistance with the coordination of the fair. Typical duties of this role included securing reservations for all rentals, creating a marketing plan, including print, web, and social media, designing the event map and program, attending meetings with city departments and staff as necessary, assisting with securing event sponsors, coordinating entertainment on stages, and acting as a liaison to artists and vendor coordinators, and coordinating shuttle and parking services, as well as being on site the weekend of the event for logistical support. 4 proposals were received by the deadline, ranging in fees from $82,500 to nearly $400,000 in year 1. The lowest proposal fee increasing by 5% each additional year. Switching gears to Hometown Days, this community event was spearheaded by a group of dedicated volunteers in the community in 1979. The first Hometown Days event was held in the spring of 1980 and ran each year until the pandemic cancellations in 2020 and 2021. The event consists of a parade through the downtown, a fun run, pancake breakfast, festival in the park, vendor marketplace, live bands, community booths, food booths, and a beer garden. The city has co-sponsored this event for many years, providing logistical support to the committee through the planning stages and the weekend of the event, as well as public works maintenance services throughout the event weekend. This past December, staff reached out to the president and chair of the committee, inquiring about plans for 2020. She shared concerns that the committee was experiencing a reduction in the number of community volunteers available to assist with planning the event, particularly taking on the chair position for the upcoming year. The city was notified by the chair on January 5th that the committee members voted for the city to take on the management and coordination of the event for 2020 and in future years. As of today, 5 committee members have already reached out to myself and Wendy to let us know they do plan to continue assisting in their committee roles, with additional conversations taking place this coming week. Turning to our community and the value San Carlos residents places on community events was clearly demonstrated at the Goblin Walk and Night of Holiday Lights this past fall, as attendance matched pre-pandemic levels. Additionally, in the 2021 Community Satisfaction Survey, when residents were asked about satisfaction with city's efforts to provide services, 91% of responders were most satisfied with community events, and 90% of responders viewed community events as somewhat important, very important, and extremely important. Again, reiterating the value the community places on our community events. Taking on the management of Hometown Days, as well as providing additional support to the recreation supervisor for the Art and Wine Fair, will require the addition of a new recreation coordinator position within the Parks and Recreation Department. This position will assist in both of these events, as well as other city events throughout the year. Additionally needed is an increase in program funding and professional services for Hometown Days. It is important to note the city will still recruit and rely on community volunteers to support these events, just as the events have relied on volunteers in the past. As I mentioned previously about Hometown Days, staff has already heard from committee members sharing their interest to continue to be a part of planning the event. Lastly, I want to mention the partnership between the city and Chamber of San Mateo County. I've had the opportunity to meet with the president and CEO to discuss how the Chamber can support the city in taking on these events, including recruiting volunteers and seeking out new community sponsors. This slide provides an overview of the program budget. As you can see, net expenses to the city total $80,000 for fiscal year 2021-22, and $132,250 for fiscal year 2022-23. Revenues projected include monies collected from sponsorships and vendor booth fees. However, it is recommended that when the update to the master fee schedule is provided to council, that the booth fees for all nonprofit organizations serving the San Carlos community would be waived. Staff believes this reflects the spirit of Hometown Days, always being an opportunity for community organizations to fundraise for their respective organizations and to take part in the event, making it what it is. The council action for you tonight is to adopt a resolution increasing the community events program budget to include the creation of a new recreation coordinator and other operational expenses. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Amy. I will turn it over to my colleagues. Are there any questions for Amy this evening? Vice Mayor Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Amy, thanks for the presentation and for the just the overall framing of this discussion. Can you, a lot of the, Hometown Days is very much a community event. It's been driven by the community for decades. And so the role that we're looking at potentially will be to help coordinate. You'll still need lots of volunteers and lots of members of the nonprofits to do the sell foods, do the games and booths. And I think typically they would, they'll generate certain revenues for themselves. That still would occur under this new scenario, right? So if you're, Britton Acres and you've got the Mystery Wall, what if you've get whatever tickets you get for the, that weekend, that would be generated towards the PTA there, or whoever is sponsoring agency. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, that's the spirit of Hometown Days, and that will continue.
Excellent. And is it your sense that with this change for both events that sort of this is going to have to be heavily volunteer? I don't say driven, but coordinated, and sort of you have to have a huge amount of volunteers to make this happen. Is it your sense in terms of talking to sort of the chamber? I know you mentioned on the chamber side that they're going to look at it, but from the Hometown Days, do you feel pretty confident that we'll be able to find the volunteers and have the volunteers to make this continue to be a success?
Yes. Like I mentioned, we've already received word from at least 5 of the committee members that they want to continue their role in Hometown Days and continue to volunteer their time for the success and to help plan that event. Weekend of volunteers are relied upon, and so we'll need all of that support moving forward. And also for the Art and Wine Fair, I know there's a whole crew of volunteers that have been, counted on in the past. Wendy is in the process of reaching out to them and getting that volunteer crew and buy-in. And, where we see that we may need additional support is we're going to recruit in our community for volunteers to help us out.
Great. And is it, last quick question, I know I'm sort of probably over my allotment, so before I get in trouble from the mayor. I'm wondering too, like with the Hometown Days, you've got different sort of for-profit businesses that are part of it, whether it's the petting zoo or the rides or those kind of things. I mean, is it your sense that we might be able to, look more around because you have someone full-time that we might maybe find some cost savings or some around that, some of those vendors to potentially use to plug back into the community, basically, or to maybe add other items or something for the
So looking at, as the city and as, Parks and Recreation is taking on these additional events, is looking at it, over the course of a year, is what are similar event aspects that are consistent between a few events, and trying to get one contract in terms of if it's entertainment or if it's bands, if it's
I see.
I think of a different example, but doing a larger contract on that and trying to in turn save, be a cost savings to the city. A different point from your comment, and I'm thinking.
No, you're fine. I think that answered my question. I hadn't thought about sort of the coordination, the consolidation sort of with the contracts. That makes a lot of sense. So great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Amy. Adam actually asked a lot of my questions around volunteerism and participation, so thank you for that, Adam. I will just ask kind of more broadly, Amy, are you and Wendy confident that this new approach will preserve kind of just the fantastic community nature and you know, the volunteerism, just the spirit of the event by taking this approach?
Yes. You know, Wendy came on board, hitting the ground running, first for farmers market. We've seen how, you know, with her being on board in our department, we've successfully transitioned the management of the farmers market to the city. And, you know, Wendy has well over 15 years of experience coordinating the Art and Wine Fair in her Chamber of Commerce role. And she's bringing that, you know, to the city, to our department, so that she can lead us in successfully planning the event for 2022. Should council approve a position tonight, we will begin recruitment as soon as possible. With that said, we'll also have kind of an all hands on deck team meeting. And if there's certain tasks that need to get done sooner, then we'll have having someone on board. That's the way our team does it. And we will all chip in and fill in as needed until we get this additional person on board, so that we don't skip a beat for the Art and Wine Fair in the planning that takes place in January and February and March.
Great, thank you. It's good to hear it in that light. Then just the budget question. So I see we're going from 105 in spend to 167,000 in spend in year 2. And, you know, why is that increase? And what do you think the increases will be thereafter?
So that's primarily the cost of the full-time employee for salary and benefits. Because we're requesting funding in this fiscal year, it's prorated for the last bit of the year at $50,000. And then looking at next fiscal year, it's $150 for salary and benefits for the position.
Okay, so on into the future, it should be roughly that 167 or
Correct.
a slight increase.
Yes, so that's the jump from this year to next year.
Got it. Okay, thank you, Amy.
Okay, Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Amy, the staff report said that there was a huge range in bids that we got. I mean, from as low as 82,000 up to 388,000. And we're advertising this position, I believe, at 80. Is that correct?
The coordinator salary?
Yeah, the coordinator salary.
Roughly, yes.
All right. What's your feeling in terms of, you know, the kind of applicant that we might get? I mean, do we have some flexibility if we have a problem getting applicants for that amount? And I only say that not because I don't think that $80,000 is, you know, enough money, but when I look at the income levels required to, you know, maintain a reasonable standard of living in San Mateo County, you know, 80 is below that. It's, you know, I mean, you're considered a low to moderate income at 93,000. So that's one of my concerns. I mean, do we have some flexibility to increase that if you don't feel that we get the level of applicant that we might be expecting?
That is something that we can come back to council with if we do not get a pool of applicants for the coordinator position. We do plan, should council approve the position tonight, we do plan on posting it on CalOps as early as tomorrow. We do want to move forward with this if it is approved. And we typically will post a job for 4 weeks. We haven't posted a full-time job in recreation. Trying to think of when we last did. It's been a while. So hard to say and hard to estimate the pool of applicants that we may receive.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Palmer Lumhan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so my colleagues asked a lot of the questions that I had. So I just have one. Do you kind of have a sense, Amy, of the specific tasks that this individual coordinator role will be responsible for? And if so, could you describe kind of what you expect that to be? I think Vice Mayor Rack was kind of speaking to that earlier, and I just wanted to get a clearer picture of kind of what the person's role would be. Thank you.
General role, not specific to any event.
Correct. Yeah. Like what task would they be doing as it pertains to the two events, and then generally, yeah.
So obtaining necessary supplies, equipment, rentals for the event. For Hometown Days, it's reaching out to different committee chairs, the volunteers that I talked about that still want to be a part of it. Working really closely with Wendy. I see Wendy in this position, or working side by side, working with each other to manage all of the tasks. Marketing is huge. So marketing is going to have to be a really strong ability that this position can have. I can go through a whole list of different tasks and responsibilities.
Yeah, just want a general kind of understanding kind of how they fit into the organization. So you answered that. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, all of my questions have been answered. So thank you, Amy. I'll go ahead and open it up to public comment now. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, the instructions are on the screen. Crystal, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
Yes, there are 2 hands up at the moment. First one is Franz Sittelhuber. You should be able to mute.
Good evening again, Council and Mayor. I appreciate your guys' service. I've been a volunteer with the Hometown Days Committee since 2014. Working closely with Glenna Eaton and Adriana Werner on coordinating all of the event. I am a resident on Arroyo Street, directly across the street from Burton Park at the end of the 12K run. I participated in the Hometown Days events as a child. I have had fish that have lived multiple years from that experience. I think it is a core value of what San Carlos brings and defines part of us being City of Good Living. The ask that I have for the city to consider as to finding a resource to be the liaison of this particular effort and taking over the management of this grassroots mobilization and this volunteer-focused organization is to really support the current body of the organization with the logistics around the sanitation and the public safety and the recruitment of the heavy donor sponsors. One of the number one things that we see as a challenge as a board member and as a group is that we're able to get our own team members of our own local constituents. For me, running AYSO and running a Hometown Days indoor soccer tournament and using it as a recruitment element for our nonprofit status and getting people engaged in playing soccer and using the youth center, as well as coordinating and filing the paperwork with the San Carlos School District to use that specific gym during the event, has been really the primary focus of the volunteers, is to get our own groups aligned to support the event to be successful. And really we need the support of the city to kind of really make the event go well, with all the things that we don't think about, with coordinating the public health inspector to make sure that the food service venues are doing their inspections and making sure that warm water is available, hands are washed, food served safely, that the public safety is there, that there aren't break-ins and there are thefts at night, and to make sure.
Thank you, Franz. Your 2 minutes have passed. Can you wrap it up real quick?
Perfect. Just help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Franz. And the last hand up right now is Paula Moffitt. You should be able to unmute.
Hello, I'm Paula Ebinger Moffitt, a resident, business owner, and dedicated volunteer of the San Carlos Art and Wine Fair. Our Art and Wine Fair is one of the best on the peninsula because of Eccles events. I volunteered with most of you at the event, and you might know what it takes to make sure an event of this size runs safely and smooth for all. Planning usually starts in December for our October fair. Hiring someone new in February or March is concerning to me. This event, when set up effectively, will bring visitors that will result in money for businesses and sorry, I'm so stressed, and the need in more people to our streets and vendors alike to sell their goods. Please consider letting the 30th year be as wonderful as it was prior to COVID and hire Eccles Events who can make sure San Carlos will shine. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. And there are no further hands. Oh, actually, hold on. It looks like one hand is up, but I can't see. Oh, there goes Karen. Karen Molinari. You are up and you should be able to unmute. There you go.
Hello. Since I'm still on watching, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate this recommendation. I am so excited to see the commitment from the city and especially, of course, Amy and Parks and Rec to keep this amazing tradition going on in our community, and can also echo what Franz has said with regard to Hometown Days and Paula's comments on art and wine. And I'm just really excited to see that we're making the commitment to continue these efforts. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And we do have another hand that has just been raised. Sandy Pipemeyer. You may unmute.
Hi there. I just wanted to make sure that I thank Amy. I've been part of Hometown Days for many years doing the food vendors, and Amy gets it. And we are going to be so excited to be working with her to keep making Hometown Days the thing that the community has loved for so many years. That's it. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy. Okay, and there are no further hands.
Thank you, Crystal. And thank you to everyone who called in with public comments on this item. I will open it up for discussion now. Councilmember Palmer Lohan, I see your hand.
Yeah, I also want to thank the public for calling in and sharing their perspective on this. And since I've had the honor and privilege of living in the city of San Carlos, what is amazing about it is all the volunteerism. But as we know, with the economy as it is, getting those volunteers is just becoming increasingly difficult, and some of our institutions are under stress, and it's unclear to me if some of the amazing programming we have is going to be coming back after pandemic. We made some significant steps as council to bring on additional staff to help with some of these things. And I personally don't know that this decision, other than to hire the person, the way that we execute, in my mind, is really up to staff on these types of things. So I'm going to be voting in support of this tonight, and I have full confidence that the events will be just as wonderful as they are already always have been. And I appreciate that change is difficult for some of our community members who maybe won't have the same type of role that they've had in the past. And, were it not for their contributions, we wouldn't be in this position to have such a, legacy type programming to work with. So just wanted to explain my perspective on that, how I'll be voting this evening. So thank you.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Collins' hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I want to thank everybody who called in and gave their comments. And Amy, thank you for your presentation. I was involved with the chamber for many years. I was president 1 year, on the board many years. I was involved enough with the Art and Wine Fair to know how much hard work it is, and that there are a lot of people who worked a lot harder than I did, and it's a Herculean effort. But once I got all of the details, I had to, I talked to a lot of people, I read the staff report, I asked a lot of questions, and I really would like to continue with the way that we have done things over the last several years, but there have been so many disruptions and changes in the city over the last recent last few years, particularly with the pandemic and now it's closing down on Laurel Street. This is a real difficult decision for me, but I'm more or less reluctantly supporting this because I think that all things considered, we really have to make this move. I think it's important that we find a new direction. But I think if I hadn't been so involved in so many aspects of the community for so many years, it'd be a lot easier decision. But it's not. But I just wanted to make sure that people understand that sometimes we're faced with decisions that where our heart is in one place and our head's in the other. This time, I think I'm voting with my head. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Vice Mayor Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought you were going to go with John first. So, thank you, Amy, for the presentation, and I appreciate all the public comment that came in, and also heard from some, from some other members of the community as well, and having volunteered for both events, and like Ron, I served on didn't make it to president of the chamber, but did serve on the chamber board and volunteered at Hometown Days. I think these events are so well. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and it is very much community driven and volunteer driven. But I do think we need to be shifting into having the support from the city to make this continue to be effective and to work. Things are changing. I know that volunteerism is sort of ebbs and flows sometimes, and so having that consistency from the city and our ability to work with volunteers, I think is going to be a step forward. So I'll be supporting this as well, and I appreciate all the all the work that's gone into this before, and I hope that we can continue to, and I'm confident that we'll continue to have wonderful events for the community, and I look forward to continue to myself to volunteer at both events because we need volunteers, and I think it's a good opportunity to continue to support the community.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Dugan. John, you're muted.
I'm not having a good mute night. Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. These are such, just fantastic events for our community, and change here was inevitable coming out of the transition of our Chamber of Commerce, and I'm really glad that, and I know, there's some passions on both sides of this one, but I'm really glad that Amy and Wendy have really worked hard to think through how these events can be most successful. And I'm glad as a city we're moving to even further institutionalize these events to really make them a permanent part of our community and our fabric. So I will support this measure tonight as well. And, I just look forward to many, many years and decades of these great events going on in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. I'm going to share my thoughts on this topic too. As I mentioned when talking about the Week of the Family, I think our community has really missed our special events in town during the pandemic. And so I'm going to support hiring staff to bring the Art and Wine Fair and the Hometown Days events back. An event that also went on hiatus during the pandemic is the San Carlos Day of Service, which I know a few of my colleagues here on council participated in as well. This was a fall event that was coordinated also with Amy's team and other members of our city staff. It was a very popular way to volunteer and give back to our community over the course of a day. So I would really like to see that event brought back too, if possible, with the city bringing it under our umbrella and then calling on community volunteers to help with it. What I have found after volunteering in our schools for nearly a decade is that it is getting increasingly difficult to find volunteers who have the time to lead these very big events like Hometown Days. So I think to make sure that they continue in a regular fashion, it makes the most sense to bring them into the city as city-run events and then calling on volunteers to help as needed, which is what our community does best. And I also recognize that our community events really contribute to our high quality of life here in San Carlos. People constantly ask me when Hometown Days is coming back. So I'm thrilled, Amy, that your team is willing to step up and take this on, and I have full confidence in you. And I'm looking forward to them continuing in the future. Are there any other comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt Resolution 2022-12, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos authorizing an increase to the general fund community events program budget for fiscal year 2021 to 22 in the amount of $80,000 and fiscal year 2022 to 23 in the amount of $132,250 to include the cost of a new full-time recreation coordinator and other operational expenses to support the coordination and management of the San Carlos Art and Wine Fair and Hometown Days events.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
And Mayor McDowell?
Yes. Thank you, Amy. You were on the hook for quite a bit tonight. Good presentation.
That's my record. I'm going to go now. Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to item 10B, consideration of appointments to the City Council subcommittees and ad hoc committees for 2022. And it looks like Jeff is on the line to present this. You're muted, Jeff.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. On for you this evening is consideration of your annual council appointments to internal city subcommittees, as well as outside appointments that other organizations ask for members of our City Council to sit on. Our process was the same this year as it has been in the past. I received feedback from all 5 of you individually on any changes or adjustments that you might be requesting. And we ultimately got very few this year. We put those together for the mayor, and as in past years, the tradition is that these recommendations come from the mayor to the City Council for your consideration. You can certainly discuss all of them and make changes this evening. You can always bring this back throughout the course of the year if schedules change or life circumstances change and it becomes impossible to attend a regularly standing meeting or something to that effect. Those adjustments can be made throughout the year. I do want to note that there are 3 adjustments to what appears in the packet that the council will need to consider as part of whatever they ultimately adopt this evening. Our age-friendly task force subcommittee was inadvertently left off the list, as well as the employee retention subcommittee. And so the adjustments there would be on age-friendly. Last year, it was Mayor Palmer Lohan and Councilmember Collins serving on that committee. This year, we're recommending Mayor McDowell and Councilmember Palmer Lohan. I understand that the task force has requested that all cities participating have their mayor be part of that particular committee. So that adjustment is being recommended. There is no adjustment for the employee recruitment and retention subcommittee. Last year, Mayor McDowell was on the committee with Councilmember Duggan, and it's being proposed to keep those assignments this year. The final third change would be that the chamber liaison that was being recommended in the staff report you have before you this evening as Councilmember Palmer Lohan would be adjusted this evening to reflect Mayor McDowell in that particular position. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have or help in any way I can to facilitate your conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I believe we need to extend the meeting before we continue. Is there a motion to extend the meeting?
Move to extend the meeting till 11 o'clock.
I'll second.
Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan,
Yes.
and Mayor McDowell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Councilmember Collins, I see your hand raised. Did you have a comment on the committees?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mine is a very tiny adjustment. I'm on the Silicon Valley Clean Water Board, and the dates have been changed to the second Monday of each month. That was just done at the end of last year.
Okay, Crystal, are you able to update the document? Make
Yes.
a note of that.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
made the note. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion if there's no other.
That sounds good.
Okay. I move to approve the updates to the City Council subcommittees and ad hoc committees for 2022 and add the Employee Recruitment and Retention Subcommittee with Council members McDowell and Dugan. I have that correctly. As representatives, and add the Age Friendly Initiative Subcommittee with Council members Mayor McDowell and Council member Palmer Lohan as representatives. Do I need to do the chamber one as well? And
Yes,
to
please.
adjust the chamber representative to reflect that Mayor McDowell will now take over that responsibility.
Is there a second?
Second.
Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Okay. Councilmember Palmer Lohan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
Councilmember Collins,
Yes.
and Mayor McDowell.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. We will move on to item 11, agenda setting. Items discussed in this agenda setting section will be considered by the council for placing on a future agenda. No action will be taken on these items at this meeting. 11A is consideration of agendizing an item amending San Carlos's beekeeping regulations. And I'm not sure who brought this forward, but feel free to.
Mayor McDowell, that was I that submitted this. And speaking with community members recently, in keeping with our climate mitigation adaptation plan that we just recently adopted, I just wanted to, see if what the will of the council was to consider this particular topic in future. In speaking with some of the community members, there's a belief that we could, make some minor adjustments to an ordinance, and just wondering, what the thoughts are of my colleagues on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer Lohan. I'll open it up to comments from my colleagues. Vice Mayor Rack.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Palmer Lohan, for bringing it up. I'm happy to support putting this on the agenda. I think we've obviously heard from a lot of the community members, and I'm curious to see what we can do to make some adjustments, and happy to put it on the agenda.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised, but I too am happy to put this on the agenda. I too looked at our climate mitigation and adaptation plan and saw the word garden, as in home garden or community garden, mentioned 22 times. And we can't have gardens without bees. So there might be a nice kind of implementation action that we could put beekeeping in as a deliverable from that. So I'm open to bringing it back as well. Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I support taking a look at it. Bees are critical to our environment. I understand there are issues. Bees are having a tough decade, and it's not looking any better. And we certainly received an outpouring of folks that are pointing out that maybe our current policies are a bit out of step with the rest of the peninsula. So I'm happy to take a look at that as well.
Okay, that's 4 votes. So I believe that's enough to move this forward. Jeff, do you need anything else from council?
Nope, I think that was clear direction. We'll move some things around in the workload so that we can make room for review of the ordinance.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to our agenda. I see nothing else. Does anyone else have an agenda setting item to bring up this evening?
Through the chair.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Crystal. I hear that there is public comment, so we will turn it over to the public comment.
Okay, thank you. First up, we have Kathleen Gallagher, followed by Nikki Irvine.
Thank you so much. Long meeting. I'll be super brief, less than 2 minutes. Thank you. By the way, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your support of agendizing this. There's a lot of expertise in this area. You probably know from some of the information that City of Burlingame, San Mateo, Redwood City, Foster City have all basically adopted policies and ordinances that are much more and climate change friendly, climate mitigation change friendly. So what I would ask City Council and City Manager and staff is that you use our expertise in assisting perhaps with this policy. There are some, Burlingame in particular has a good policy. I think it's very consistent. It is a no cost. I think there's minimal issues. And as Michael Brownrigg would say, it's really not a contentious issue. And it will be consistent with the climate action plan that San Carlos has recently adopted. So I appreciate your support, but I mostly would encourage you use particularly the Guild's expertise to expedite and bring this back to council since there is indeed a climate crisis and we will need to address this. And I think San Carlos with the name as a green city should expedite this policy. Thanks for your support.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Next up is Nikki Irvine, followed by Jennifer Durkin.
This is Nikki Irvine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. So I'm an environmental anthropologist, and I've led the Be Legal program of the San Mateo County Beekeepers Guild since 2013. Our San Carlos Be Legal, including among others Sam Hertzberg, Jennifer Wisnam, and Shilpa Thanawala, reached out repeatedly over 8 years to San Carlos. So we are celebrating tonight that you will vote whether to include a new approach to regulating beekeeping on your work schedule. I'd like to emphasize 2 points. There is broad public support for beekeeper efforts to help pollinators, to help lessen the impact of the loss of pollinators on our environment, especially as climate change intensifies. There's also broad support for a uniform approach to regulating beekeeping in San Mateo County using nuisance and mitigation. 2 petition campaigns made us realize how widespread this view is. In 2013, nearly 50 San Carlos residents signed a Be Legal petition asking for uniform beekeeping regulation in our county. In 2019, our second petition campaign, 255 San Carlos residents asked for a nuisance mitigation approach to resolve the occasional beekeeping complaint. Our county mainly uses nuisance, and the number has been growing. In 2013, 67% of our county used nuisance. Since our campaign, 86% use nuisance. If San Carlos overturns its effective ban on beekeeping and adopts this approach, 90% of our county would use a similar policy, one which is more directly and effectively addressing the rare neighbor complaints that might arise. We really thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. And it looks like our last hand up is from Jennifer Durkin. Jennifer, you should be able to.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. It wasn't working earlier in the meeting. I'm actually going to take far less than 2 minutes, but I just wanted to say thank you. I organized a group called Bring Back Bay Area Bees and Butterflies when I realized how imperiled our insects are. I really appreciate your willingness to listen to these issues and help us increase our biomass and increase the number of native plants and pollinators we have. And I also want to laud you for having a native garden right out in front of the City Hall. I noticed that recently. So that's all I have to say. Just thank you for entertaining this. We are thrilled.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. And that was our last hand.
Okay. Are there any further comments from council on this item? Okay, seeing none. Anyone wanting to bring up an agenda setting item? Okay, seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Take care.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Good night.